Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to coverage of the Apex Online Racing PC Endurance League with round 4 at Francorchamps. And as you can tell by the thumbnail, my name is Yorkie065 and I'm your commentator for this evening, and we are going to be doing a 2.4 hour race, or 2 hours and 25 minutes, as the game doesn't allow us to do 24 minutes, so 25 is obviously the closest. Welcome to you who are there in the live chat and those who are watching this back later on. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope that you are well, feeling good, and you are comfy, prepared and ready for this 2.4 hour race. And we've got some qualifying coverage as well prior to the race, which we'll be bringing you as well, which is about 20 minutes in total, but the cars will not be allowed to leave the pit lane for the first 5 minutes due to the qualifying session being a wet weather qualifying session. So in the event of fairness, none of the drivers are allowed to set any qualifying laps in the first 5 minutes, because that's generally when the track is driest. After that point, the track has considerably gotten wetter. The lap times are usually quite a bit slower, and therefore those who get times in and those in those first 5 minutes are a very heavy advantage to those who don't quite get a clear lap in until later on. So let's take a look at the calendar that we've been running for this season. As you can see, we're round 4. This is the 13th of June. We are at Francorchamps with the 2.4 hour race. Next race on round 5 will be in 2 weeks' time at Imola. Unfortunately, I will not actually be here for that race. I will be sitting in a bar somewhere in Sicily, in Italy. So unfortunately, I will not be providing coverage for that race, but hopefully we can get someone in, hopefully either Aid the Ace or King Kodiak, to come in and do the commentary for that race. And then the final round of the championship season will be on the 11th of July. We'll be racing around the Circuit de la Sarre, the Le Mans 24-hour circuit, which will be another 2.4 hour race. We've done, or will be doing 3 in this season. We've already done 1, which was our opening round at Daytona Road Course, and then rounds 2 and 3 were both 2 hours in length, as you can see, at the Red Bull Ring GP circuit, and then last time round at the Circuit of Americas. So we're just going to be kicking off the lobby now, and we'll be going into the qualifying session. But in those first 5 minutes, it'll be a good opportunity to give you an updated status as to the championship standings. So let's start off with the LMP1 Pro class, where we can see Inky Chris in that Porsche 919 hybrid has got 27 points to his name, is currently the championship leader, and he has got himself an 11-point gap to his teammate Marauder there behind him, also in that Porsche 919. Colin McCoy is the first of the Audis in third position. He's got 15 points in total, only a single point behind himself, between himself and Marauder. Leon the Sick One has had, one showing so far. He was there for round 2 but wasn't present for round 1 or round 3. He's got 11 points in 4th place. Yarmo is there in 5th. Again, only showing for 1 round, being there for the opening round, getting 10 points to his name. Andrex is got 9 points to his name. He's currently there in P6. However, Andrex has pulled out for the remainder of the season, so will not be participating any further. They've then got Nunu Marcus is there with 8 points. Came in with his first round, or first race in the previous round, and had a pretty strong second place. And then Lewis, you can see, is the final driver on our LMP1 Pro standings. He has 4 points to his name, and we then do also have Coxon and Zenvo in 9th and 10th places respectively, who have got 4 points and then 1 point to their names. And Berserker is the other LMP1 Pro driver who has yet to participate in any of the races this season. So let's move on to the LMP1 amateur standings, where we've got Cleanstein way up there in the lead. As you can see, a 17-point gap between himself And Andrew Harper, who is driving the Toyota TSO 50 with 9 points to his name in second place. Logan, one of the lead coordinators, only has a single point in the Toyota TSO 50, but he is here present in this round and will be looking to score himself a good bag of points. And then the other drivers in the LMP1 AM standings, we've got Spudbuster, we've got EVR Matt 212, Beppo, J Peaches, and Skarky are all yet to actually score any points in the LMP1 amateur category. So now we move on to the first part of the GTE Pro standings, where we have got Dow King at the top there, currently leading the way with 43 points, only a single point between himself and M-Power, with 42 points in second. Mr. Van Orman is a further 16 points behind. Actually, I've got that incorrect. It's 15 points between the two of them. Chloe in the M6 GTLM is there with 23 points in fourth position. Bo, as you can see, in fifth with 16 points. Dakuza in Bo fifth. Yeah, Dakuza sixth with 12 points. 11 points goes to Bat Gabrielson, P7. Then Jardier is in P8 in his Corvette with 11 points to his name. And then we go on to the second part of the GTE Pro standings, where we can see Scott V there at the top, the Chevrolet Corvette. And then we got Speedy Go is there in 10th position. 11th is Igor with 7 points to his name. Smolder in P12. P13, Ticklish Picklewickle is yet to score a point. And then Ravelek there with 0 points, also in P14 as well. And then finally the GTE AM standings, where we have Bizanchek at the top of the leaderboard there with 61 points in total. Mali Bacho is there in second place with 35 points. Quite a deficit of 26 points between the two. Flaming Parrot in third place in the Ford GT as well. He's got 30 points to his name. Royalty is there in fourth position with 28 points. The GW in fifth place with 24. We then got Lorenzen is there with 18 points in P6. Zanowski in P7. Black Panther is there in 8th position. Now we also do have Cole 101, Scott Burnett, and Atlas Guerin, all with 7 points apiece. So they're all in joint 9th position. And then Minisco is in P12 with a single point to his name. So we'll be getting underway very, very shortly. We shall got about 35 odd seconds before the drivers are allowed to exit out onto the... So we'll bring up the actual game now, as you can see. And things seem to be very, very quiet on my end in terms of game sound, which is a bit unusual. So give me a second whilst I just go and double check that to see what is actually happening there with my game sound. You do not want to be seeing that. I want to be seeing it, so I'll bring that over. And interestingly, it doesn't seem like it is registering that the game is actually running, despite the game actually running. It did have sound earlier, so that was very unusual there, that's suddenly disappeared. So just bear with me 1 second whilst I see if I can try and get the sound back in some form or another, and why things aren't going there. But hopefully you guys can hear my voice all okay. Things in OBS seem to indicate that they are. It just seems like it's the actual game sound that seems to be absent for the moment. So everything looks all good there. Microphone still looks to be detected. And yeah, it just seems like there's no game sound whatsoever, which is a little bit unusual. Something's happened with my laptop before, something similar. But the drivers are certainly out on circuit at the moment anyway, going around. What I might try and do actually is just restart the game. Unfortunately, I was a lobby host, so that was a little bit annoying. It would have switched to someone else, but hopefully if I can get the sound back there, things should be all good. So just bear with me one moment whilst the drivers are out on track doing their qualifying session. As you saw, it is a wet qualifying session, as I had previously explained, and the drivers will also be starting on a wet track in the race as well. The conditions are due to clear up towards the end, but certainly for the first portion, a good 45 to 50 odd minutes, there'll be plenty of rain falling. So it'll be an interesting strategy to see how drivers will actually end up approaching this one, and what their pit stop windows are actually going to be like when they switch from from one set of tyres to the others. So I'm just loading back into the lobby now. And there we go. So I apologise for those technical difficulties. There seems to be something on my end with my laptop, because this has happened once before, and I haven't had it on my PC. I tend to stream from a laptop because it has a better CPU than my PC, funnily enough, and therefore it just seems slightly better and can handle the live streaming a little bit better than my PC system. But yes, here we go then. We are back with both sound and vision for you guys. So Leon the Sick One currently at the moment provisional pole position with a 2-minute 31.9. That is his first flying lap that he's had. We've got about 11 minutes and 10 odd seconds in the session remaining. And as you can see, it's just coming through the Lacombe chicane, turns 7, 8 and 9 before coming down the hill down to Bruxelles. And we've got some GTE times on the board as well, and quite a bit of GTE traffic. Leon the Sick One is going to be coming across these guys relatively quickly. He's not too far behind as he comes through the corner with no name, as it's traditionally known as. It does have a name now, but that was turn 11. One of the GTE cars getting nicely out of the way. And he's got about 3 or 4 GTE cars here immediately in front of him. One of them off to the track. The other 3 or 4 actually on the circuit. Gets held up slightly there by that Aston Martin. That Corvette stays out of the way. And then this next Corvette is going to impede him slightly. So Leon the Sick One, a little bit of trouble with the traffic in the qualifying session. As you can see, they are out on circuit at the same time as each other. So the LMP1 cars do have to contend with that. Interestingly, Leon the Sick One running with the Fuji version of the Audi R18, therefore he's running a higher downforce setup. I imagine it is to deal with the wetter conditions that we're seeing here, but he's now coming off of the final turn and will be beginning his flying lap. So let's actually jump on board with him with this roof camera, getting a relatively decent run into the first turn. Getting a good drive off. It'll be dumping a load of the hybrid energy coming down towards Eau Rouge. We need to watch out for any puddle build-up, and then coming up through Radion, pretty much completely flat out, just using the aerodynamic advantage. Any small last little bits of hybrid that he may have remaining, probably used that just to help squirt himself along as he's in the spray of one of the other LMP1 cars, and I think there may have been contact between the two of them there. Leon was on the flying lap. I'm not sure about the other car. I think it may have been Marauder. Could very well have been. So we got quite a bit of heavy damage to that Ferrari 488 that's in front. Cleanstein's out on a lap as well. Seems like Colonel McCoy is as well, but unfortunately we had to jump away from Leon the Sick One to find out who that Porsche driver was. I think it may have been Marauder. I know Logan is in the Toyota, as we can see. And then there are no other LMP1s apart from Sven that we can see here. He is actually a newcomer. I don't see him marked down on any of the championship standings. So a newcomer to the LMP1 class. I'm not too sure whether he'll be placed in LMP1 Pro or LMP1 AM, but we can see that he's in the Audi R18 and he's using the Le Mans version. So be running with a lower downforce setup, certainly in comparison to Leon the Sick One, who is coming across the start-finish line now and goes and takes pole despite the traffic that was impeding him on the lap. So very, very impressive, especially with a time of 1:58. The only driver to get below the sub 2 minute mark, as Marauder currently at the moment is 1.3 seconds off the back of Leon's time. Now Marauder is actually just starting a flying lap, so let's jump on board with him as he's coming down through Eau Rouge, then up through Radion. So the right and the left over the top of the hill, try not to take too much curb at the top there. Heard he used a little bit more of the hybrid at the top here. Just drain the remainder of that before coming into the Le Mans chicane, braking at the 100 meter mark, shifted down through the gears, just hook up the curbs quite nicely, try and keep the car as far left as possible to open up the right hander of turn 9, use the exit curb, use a little bit of the boost coming down the hill, then getting hard on the brakes into this turn 10 hairpin, double apex it up, hit an early apex and a late apex, turn 11, just chuck the car in, and then this is where you use more of the hybrid energy coming down the hill towards Pouhon. It's flat, well, not quite flat out, it's just a short stab of the brake. You would usually be just jumping down one gear, but dropping down two because of the wetter conditions. Try and get the car hooked in. Then we then come into Piff Paff or Campus Corner, turns 13 and 14. Quite nicely through those, using a little bit of curb there. Turn 15, Stavilo. Not quite up to the apex on the inside, but still reasonably close. The curb pull to freight. Oh, curb pull freight. Sorry. It's a good run coming off there. Pretty much completely flat out. Obviously using the remainder of the hybrid. Coming down this back straight towards Blanchimont. Just chuck the car in. Completely flat out despite the wet conditions. Obviously running plenty of downforce. Then coming hard onto the brakes into the bus stop chicane. And braking way too late and going way too deep. As we can see. And that is going to ruin the rest of his lap, but it should be able to go quite easily for another couple of attempts with 5 minutes and 20 odd seconds, although he has bailed out back to the pits to get a fresh set of tyres. So Leon the Sick One leading the LMP1 class at the moment as he is just about to begin another lap. Colonel McCoy coming out of the pit lane for some more attempts. He's currently sat in P2, but has got Leon the Sick One who has just come through the shot there and will be passing him relatively quickly without too much trouble. Marauder is back out onto the circuit, currently holding P3. Cleanstein, we can see, is there in P4 at the moment in the LMP1 class. Inky Chris is currently there in 5th, our LMP1 Pro Championship leader. Logan is currently in 6th place at the moment, and then we've got Sven is there in 7th place, trying to find a little bit of clear track to get a better and improved lap time in for himself. We also have Coxon, who's just joined the session as well. He's yet to actually put a lap in, but he is heading the back of the LMP1 field at the moment, currently in 8th place for that class. Jumping to the GTEs, Empower is currently leading the way in what looks to be a rather battered Corvette, but I am sure that that is not actually representative of what he is experiencing. His pole time at the moment is a 2 minute 18.4, a good distance, about 7/10 of a second to Mr. Van Orman, who's currently holding a provisional P2, also driving in the Corvette. As you can see, Speedy Go is the first of our non-Corvette drivers, currently P3 in class. He is also our... well, he's in the GTE... no, he's not. Sorry, he's in the Pro. Yeah, He is in the GTE Pro, but I didn't think, for a moment, I didn't think there was a Ford GT in the Pro class, but Speedy Go is. And actually Bo is as well. There's 2 Ford GTs. So my slight mistake there, but Speedy Go currently on provisional P3. Dakuza is currently sat in 4th place at the moment. He's got another Corvette up there in front of him. Brzancek currently holding P5 at the moment. He is one of the GT class cars. Smolder is currently holding P6 in the ever beautiful and fantastic sounding Aston Martin V8 Vantage GTE car. Chloe in the M6 is currently sat in P7. And then we got Miley Bacho is there currently provisionally in P8 with a rather battered looking Ferrari, but again I'm sure that's not actually 100% representative. Seems like he is on a outlap at the moment. Royalty is currently there in 9th place in the GTE class. Colin is currently 10th. Atlas Guerin is out there in 11th place. And then Bo is there in 12th place, one the other GT Ford GT in the GTE Pro category. And then Xeon is rounding out the GTE class, currently provisionally P13, some way off of M-Power's time at the moment. Quite a number of drivers are yet to really put in a 100% representative lap time. Let's jump up to the head of the field to see where drivers are. So Leon the sick one is just coming down to the Brussels hairpin, turn 10, and then Inky Chris has managed to close the gap to 0.4 of a second between the 2 times. He's just coming through Pouon at the moment. Colonel McCoy, as you can see, going round in the lower downforce kit of the Audi R18. He has just come through curb pull through it and is on that long back straight towards Blanchimont, but he's lifting out of that. So obviously this lap will not be a hot lap. He's just preparing himself for the next lap, which will be his final attempt with just over a minute remaining. He's got 4 litres of fuel, so he's got plenty of fuel on board to actually do it, but I think he's just trying to build himself the space and prepare himself for that flying run. We do have some drivers who will no longer be participating in the qualifying session, one of them being Marauder there in the pit lane. As you can see, Sven also currently provisionally P6. He is in the pit lane, so is Logan. Mr. Van Olmen in 2nd place in the GTE class. He won't be participating any further. Neither will be Brzancek, Atlas Guerin or Bo. All of those drivers in the pit lane. Bo's actually coming out onto the track, but he's not going to be able to get round to do another flying lap to improve his lap time. So let's see where the other guys are. Inky Chris is on his final attempt. Leon the sick one also on his final attempt. Didn't go quicker on that previous lap there. As we know, Colonel McCoy is out there on a hot lap now. Kleinstein is now also on a hot lap, and so is Coxon. Coxon coming down towards Blanchimont, so we shall stick with him for the moment just to see what his time is. I can hear a GTE car up in front as well. Also will be crossing a line at a similar sort of time, and I believe that is Speedy Go. So here comes Speedy Go coming across the timing beam. Does he improve on his lap time? And it doesn't look like that he has. It doesn't look like that Kleinstein has either. He's jumped back to the pit lane. So Colonel McCoy is bailing out of his lap at the top over at Stavler. I think he may have got held up a little bit by one of the Corvettes, and you can see his lap time split there, 5 seconds off. So Inky Chris has just gone through the picture, and he's going to bail out of his lap time as well. So Leon the sick one will be taking a provisional pole position unless... Nope, Coxon has just retired back to the pit lane as well. Mr. Van Olmen is obviously conceding to M-Power. He's got pole position there. Speedy Go in 3rd, Dakuza 4th. We've got Mali Bacho. He just finished this lap. Will be starting from no better than P7. Chloe is coming out of curb pull threat And then coming down towards Blanchimont to complete a lap. Has got an Audi R18 there in front. Could be picking up a little bit of slipstream from that Audi. Could be aiding Chloe in the run to the final chicane. Getting onto the brakes, it looked like locked up there, and yep, it's gone too deep. So any time that it did gain through getting that slipstream off the Audi, it's now just being completely and utterly lost. Comes across the line and does improve on the lap time, only a tenth slower than Mali Bacho, but yeah, wasn't enough to gain the position. Bo is the last driver who seems to have made friends with the wall and has detached the spoiler on the back of his Ford GT. So here is the overall classification. Then Leon the sick one gets pole. Inky Chris in second. Didn't get a chance to look through the rest as Leon the sick one just skipped through. So Leon the sick one starting in pole. Inky Chris second. Colonel McCoy in third place. Marauder in fourth. Kleinstein was in fifth place. Sven in sixth place. Did I say 15th from the last one? I might have done. I apologise. Sixth place was for Sven Coxon in seventh. Logan in eighth place. Empower starting P1 for the GTE class. Mr. Van Orman in second. Speedy Go in third. Dakuza fourth. Fifth position is held by Bazanchek. Smolder in sixth. Mali Bacho in seventh. Chloe in eighth position. Ninth for Royalty. Zion in 10th place. Colin in 11th. Atlas Guerin in 12th place. And then Bo in 13th. So, yeah. The drivers just in a 2-minute kind of preparation period where they get a chance to double check that they are using the correct setup for the race. They have that loaded and ready, and double check and prepare their race strategies for their pit stop with the planned work that they would like their pit crew to perform on their car in their pit stops, which they will need to have set correctly, as obviously the conditions will be changing in this race. It is raining at the moment, as you can quite clearly see, but towards the 50-minute to the hour mark, things should start to clear up a little bit and the track should become drier. So the drivers will not be going on the green light. Instead, they'll be doing the manual formation lap that we do here at AOR, where the drivers will drive around the circuit at 120 kilometers per hour, which is 80 miles per hour. Try and maintain the heat and temperature in the brakes and also the tyres. And I think Leon the sick one may have actually just caught the wall a little bit there coming through turn 1, which is certainly not ideal. Hopefully he didn't pick up any damage from that. But yeah, they'll drive around in the single file formation, as you can see. Just do a warm-up lap and try and maintain that heat and temperature. In these kind of conditions, it's kind of nice to have the tyres cool off, as the wet tyres don't really fare too well at hotter temperatures, and they do prefer running at those cooler temperatures of around 30, 40 to 50 odd degrees. So if you can get those temperatures down there, that is ideal for them. And then once we come through Blanchimont and start to approach the bus stop chicane, the drivers will form up in a 2x2 formation, forming two trains alongside each other, with the odd positions on driver's right and then even positions on driver's left, which will give Leon the sick one and third place and fifth, seventh, so on and so forth, the inside line for turn 1. And obviously the speed will drop down to 80 kilometers per hour, which is 50 miles an hour, and then on the start finish line, or shall I say the start finish grid, from the end of the curbing on the exit of that bus stop chicane through to the actual start finish line itself, Leon the sick one can begin the race by accelerating hard in one smooth motion. He is not allowed to fake the start, so we can't go, then stop, and then go again. It has to be one smooth motion and going the first time. That'll begin the start of the race for the LMP1 class, and Empower will be doing the same for the GTE class. So there is 2 starts effectively that we'll be doing in this race, and obviously that will kick off the 2 hours and 25 minutes of racing. It'll be more like 2 hours and 22 odd minutes by the time we get round to the actual start finish line. So a slightly longer race than the 2 hours that we have been doing for the previous rounds, and obviously the multi-class element with these LMP1 cars having to work their way through the GTE traffic will also be a factor in this race as well, something that the drivers will have to contend with. But will Winky Chris be able to get a solid result here? Will we be able to take the race to Leon the Sick One, who seems to have the pace in the LMP1 field? How will the other drivers fare as well? And we'll also be watching the battle at the head of the GTE field, as there's quite a titanic battle going on between Empower and Mr. Van Olmen, even though Empower has a good 15-point lead between the two. So here we go, we're on the start grid. It's any time between now and the start finish line that Leon the Sick One could get the race underway, and he does so, getting hard on the accelerator. So the LMP1 cars are away racing, drivers trying to stick out the spray. It looks like that Marauder has managed to get the jump on Colonel McCoy, although Colonel McCoy is coming back at him on the exit. But I think Marauder may have just eked out ahead as they come on the run down towards Eau Rouge. Here is the GTE cars, and we are away with them as well. Look like that both Empower and Mr. Van Olmen have got a good clean start, but a lot of the GTEs are bunching up a little bit further behind. Chloe was in a 3-wide situation with Smolder and one of the other drivers. Just seen, I think, Xeon on the back there, towards the back of the grid, getting a little bit of oversteer on the exit of turn 1. There's a lot of spray, really thick and quite difficult to see in these conditions, as Mali Bacho has managed to get himself up into 6th place. That was one of the Corvettes out wide, and I think that was Mr. Van Olmen at the top of Rouge there. Chloe's managed to get the gap to Mali Bacho, who I think may have a slowdown penalty and is obviously trying to clear that, or has had a poor run through Eau Rouge with the line that he was taking, has bunched up a whole bunch of drivers behind. You can see Bo trying to go around the outside of the guys in the Lacombe chicane. He's going to have to give room here to Brzanczek, but manages to get past quite nicely. A little bit of contact there between Xeon and Brzanczek, and there's a couple of cars off. That will be Xeon and Brzanczek, I believe. Brzanczek is back onto the grass, onto the track, sorry, and Xeon's managed to recover as well. Just a light bit of contact between the two drivers there, but it was enough to take them off the road. Hopefully they didn't incur too much damage from that, but it seems that Empower is managing to run away with, well, I say that, he's actually got Speedy Go and also Mr. Van Olmen there for very close company behind them. Empower still leading the way, and Mr. Van Olmen taking a very nice move there. Around the outside it goes, slips straight past Empower as well. Empower really struggling going into turns 13 and 14 there, and has actually now dropped down into 3rd place. May he potentially be on the wrong tyres and struggling for grip, because Mr. Van Olmen has just absolutely sailed past Empower without any difficulty whatsoever, and is starting to pull away. Be interesting to see how bad it is for Empower. There are parts of the circuit that are actually wetter than others, and around here, around the start-finish straight, you can see the spray being kicked up by the cars. It's quite considerably more than the round by Stavilo. You see that Empower is really struggling a little bit to get the car slowed down. May potentially have just cut the tyres a little bit. Mr. Van Olmen leading the way. Let's jump up to the battle between Marauder and also Colonel McCoy. You see the two of them there. It looked like that Kleinstein was going toe-to-toe with Sven. Maybe also Coxon as well. Actually, it's Kleinstein and Logan. No, Kleinstein and Coxon, sorry, going toe-to-toe. Logan's a little bit further behind in that Toyota. But these two drivers having a little bit of a chop and change of position, and Kleinstein goes down the inside into Puon, taking that 6th position back away from Coxon, using the hybrid advantage, coming down the hill to get himself in that prime position to make that move and make it stick. Sven's closing up on towards the back of Colonel McCoy until he goes and runs out wide there. It's unfortunate for him, but you can see here that there isn't all that much spray being kicked up by the cars, which means that this part of the track is a little bit drier than others. As we come down this back straight towards Blanchimont, you'll start to see the spray being picked up, or being kicked up, shall I say, from the cars. There we go. So you can see the localized weather actually kicking in. Right on board with Sven at the moment, just to see how much spray there is being kicked up, and Colonel McCoy has gone deep, had to go and cut across the bus stop chicane. That's going to be a slow down penalty for him, but I imagine that'll be a relatively easy one to actually clear, as he didn't really seem to gain too much of a time advantage from that. So we can see turn 1 relatively wet and sticky. Let's go and have a look at Bo trying to hunt down Smolden. You can see that there is some rainfall here, but there isn't all that much spray being kicked up. So that localized weather, with those rain clouds that move across the circuit, dumping the water onto the track, hasn't really reached this part of the track as of yet. But the rain is falling. It will get wetter over time, but the rain clouds seem to be bunched up elsewhere, which yeah, creates a rather interesting dynamic for the drivers, because obviously where they're running the wet tyres, they'll cool down in the wetter parts of the circuit, but the areas of the track that are drier, it's obviously going to put a lot of heat and load through the tyres, cause them to rise in temperature quite rapidly. If things get too hot, the grip does start to fall away. But Leon the sick one, pulling that gap to Inky Chris. Gap is just under 4 seconds. It's about half a second off of his previous best lap time. As he comes down on the run towards Blanchimont. We've got Marauder is there, pulling a little bit of a gap to Colonel McCoy. 7.5 seconds off his teammate at the moment. Sven has got a track limit penalty of 1 second, that we can see, and Coxon still trying to chase down Cleanstein after previously being passed down into Pouon just a couple of laps ago. It's got a nice healthy gap of 9 seconds to Logan, who is running the sole Toyota in this race. Currently at the back of the field in the LMP1 class. Speedy Go and Mr. Van Orman pulling away quite rapidly from M-Power. Two of them got an 8.5 second gap to M-Power behind, as Mr. Van Orman is leading the head of the GTE field. Chloe has managed to get up into 4th position ahead of Smolder. We can see Dakuza in the background there in that Corvette, and someone spun off in the background. It's Bo. He's got to make contact with the wall in the corner with no name. He's got to try and get that thing turned around, but doing so safely as well as not to impede any of the other drivers coming through that turn. He does manage to do it ahead of Mali Bacho, but will lose the position as they come on the run down towards Pouon. It seems like Bo's got quite a bit of damage. He's moving quite nicely out of the way for the race leader, which is Leon the sick one, so he is now into the traffic. And yeah, you can see Bo really struggling with the car. It's got some rear end damage. I imagine that is suspension damage, which is really making it difficult. Also some aero damage there as well as he goes round. Parked in the middle of the circuit, did the right thing though. Held the brakes, just remained stationary. And Inky Chris did a fantastic job there of recognising that and navigating around without making contact. Bo was kind of left there in a pretty unfortunate position after that spin, which is evidently caused by the damage which he has to his car. Hopefully he can get that back to the pits and get it repaired. It's very early stages in this race and he will drop quite far back trying to repair that damage, but at least he's got a lot of time in order to actually work his way back up through the field. Let's jump on board with Inky Chris as he is starting to work his way through the lap car traffic, as well as Leon the sick one. So we've got two GTEs here in front of us, coming quite nicely down the inside of them in the run towards turn 1. and getting a good blast of Kerrs coming off the exit of that, coming down the hill past the endurance pits towards Eau Rouge, through that, now into Raidillon and out the top. Reaching 280 kilometers per hour on the Kemmel Straight towards the Le Common chicane. And this is where he's going to need to be patient, because he's got a few GTE cars here in front of them, both of them running a little bit wide there and a little bit deep. Does a nice job there of getting past them both as they were recovering onto the circuit. And then we've got this Corvette here coming through, which he should be able to nip past with the hybrid before getting into turn 11. Shy of the apex there, I think he just got caught up on the curb on the entry. But with that, he's lost about a second or so to Leon the Sick One. Goes out wide there through the mid part of Pouhon. And then we're coming up towards a couple more GTE cars. I think this is the battle between Smolder and Chloe. And indeed it is. You can see that gorgeous Aston Martin with the Golf livery. There, the next car in front, closing quite rapidly. Chris cutting his way through between the two. Nice little slalom there. As he now passes Chloe. Next car will be M-Power, as Mr. Van Olmen has now also got a time penalty as well. We've also got two retirees from the session. I don't think it was Kleinstein. I think it was Ven is one of the drivers. We've lost one of our LMP1 cars, and we've lost one of the GTE cars as well. Actually, two GTE cars. Bo has also retired from the session. See, he is no longer at the back of the field. So Mali Bacho is the driver at the back with what looks to be quite severe damage to his Ferrari. Wonder if he'll be coming into the pit lane this time round to repair that. Nope, he'll be continuing on his way. Royalty is out there, just being passed by Logan. And there's Zion going down the hill in his Corvette. And yet Bo just popping up in the chat there to describe the unfortunate damage that he had. I just saw the incident off in the background. It did look like the damage was quite substantial, so that's really unfortunate to see you retire from the race, Bo. Zanchek having a look down the inside of Atlas Garing coming into the Colm chicane, but not quite able to make the move stick. Two of them looks like teammates. Got Logan there behind, who will sit patiently coming through the Brussels hairpin. And Speedy Go P2 in the GTE class, just about a second off the back of Mr. Van Olmen, who looked to be out a little bit wide there on the exit of Blanchimont. Coming down into the bus stop chicane now. Hooking up the curb relatively nicely, but staying away from that second curb on the exit. Such a ride on board with Speedy Go, just to get an extent of how wet the track is actually getting at this stage. So coming into turn 1, there's no real major puddles forming, but Speedy Go is letting that rear end slide round, rotating into the corner. Can be some puddles that form down at the bottom of Eau Rouge, as the water will run down the hill from Raidillon and pool at the bottom, but it doesn't seem like there's too much pooling water down there. Speedy Go in the slipstream, closing up onto the back of Mr. Van Olmen, coming down Kemmel Straight here. Not going to be anywhere near close enough to make a move, but Mr. Van Olmen a little bit deep and making a little bit of a mistake there on the entry. Getting a little bit sideways, the car kind of escaping from him a little bit, and Speedy Go has now got the run to go down the inside of Mr. Van Olmen as one of the two Porsches goes and slips past. There's very, very close between the two. There's barely any room there between the two GT leaders, But Mr. Van Orman is going to have the inside line for that turn 11 and will hold on to that position, putting up a fierce defence there. Speedy Go being very fair and respectable. So as Mr. Van Orman, to be fair, as I think that's Marauder going around the outside. I think Speedy Go was caught out slightly by Inky Chris, wanting to come through. Speedy Go was looking to the inside of Mr. Van Orman, so there was almost contact between the two of them, but yeah, Mr. Van Orman did a stellar job of giving Speedy Go a bit of a squeeze, but leaving just about enough room on the inside for a Ford GT. Carry on out on the run towards Blanchimont. We were doing a puddle watch until two drivers started going at it. As one of the Audi R18s goes through, and he'll have to jump on the brakes to follow Mr. Van Orman coming in through Blanchimont. And Mr. Van Orman was very, very sideways through there. I think scared by the Audi R18, a little bit unsure whether he was actually going to make the move. That's allowed Speedy Go to close back up onto the rear of Mr. Van Orman and bring himself back into contention. Gap is now 0.8 of a second, there or thereabouts, when it was lurking over a second. So let's do another puddle watch, and also actually watch from Speedy Go's perspective, as once again drifting his way through turn 1, which, as you can see, has cost him a good few temps, just delaying getting onto the throttle out through the exit. It does have an LMP1 car coming up behind on the run down towards Eau Rouge, but they're going to have to stay there as we come up through Radion. Very nice, although running out very wide out there. I think just to avoid and give more room to that LMP1 car. Mr. Van Orman was a little bit slower through Radion, it seemed. Didn't quite have the downforces. Once again, Mr. Van Orman is very sideways coming into Le Combe chicane, but managed to gather it back up. Coming out the exit of that now and down the hill. So this is where we were last time. Seems like the track is relatively wet, but not massively so. There's some slightly dryish patches. There's no real massive water build-up anywhere around here. Coming down into Pouhon. Be interesting to see if there's any water building up on the curbs. The Speedy Go gets very, very sideways there. Doesn't seem like there's any water, but it seems like the cars are able to keep a slightly drier area through the mid part of the apex. And then coming through Piff Paff as well. There is some wetness, but it doesn't seem like the track is completely and utterly soaked and saturated as of yet. As when it's popped up in the chat to say that he hit the wall and destroyed his engine on lap 5. I did notice that you had disappeared from the race. That's unfortunate to hear of your troubles there. Mr. Van Orman starting to pull that gap now to Speedy Go. Gap is now 2 seconds. It seems that Speedy Go has got a very tall gear 5 and a very long gear 6 as well. Shifts into it quite late and he's quite down in the rev range. Obviously something more orientated towards possibly drier conditions or being in the slipstream. Possibly also some fuel saving as well. But Empower 21 seconds behind Speedy Go, putting a stellar performance in the qualifying session to take pole position, but it's just struggled here in the race with this continuous rainfall and seems to be falling back ever further. What's his lap time this time round? About 0.2 of a second off of Speedy Go's previous lap time. Yeah, it was 0.2 of a second, but 2 seconds off the back of Mr. Van Orman as one of the other Corvettes is coming out the pit lane, and that would be Dakusa, making an early stop, potentially to fix some damage. Not entirely sure why he would have been pitting there unless he needed to get a fresh set of tyres on. But it seems like he's taken a full tank of fuel as well. But that's put him a lap down of the GT leaders. Chloe and Smolder still pretty close together. Chloe still leading the way between the two in their 4th and 5th positions. Smolder not really making too much headway on Chloe at the moment. The gap increasing coming down the straight, but coming into the calm chicane here. Be interesting to see who has potentially a setup that is suited to, or better suited to, the wet conditions. I think my predictions from what Chloe was saying in the forums, that a dry setup will be on that M6, as the majority of the race will be in drier conditions. Also, the drivers hope. Entirely depends on how long it takes for the track to actually dry out, and how well, what happens in terms of the water remaining offline. So we've got Leon, the sick one, closing up onto the back of Smolder. Manages to get past with relatively trouble-free. Caught up behind Chloe a little bit. Just had to get on the brakes there. And he's off, coming out through curb pull through. Gap 15.5 seconds to Inky Chris behind. It's just coming through the same corner, so should gain plenty of time from that. You can see the time tumbling away now as well, down to 14 odd seconds almost. This comes through Blanchimont completely flat out at 270 kilometers per hour, and then hard on the brakes into the bus stop chicane, hooking up those apexes very nicely, getting a good run off, and down into turn 1. So Colonel McCoy now up into 3rd place, a second ahead of Marauder. These two drivers have swapped positions, which we haven't seen. Also, Mr. Van Almen now actually down in 5th position as well. Is another position that we have not seen change. I wonder if yes, he's got 88 litres of fuel in his tank, so he must have come into the pit lane to serve a pit stop. He was previously leading, but it's now Speedy Goat who is out there at the head of the GTE class. You can see he's got best part of 56-57 litres of fuel in the tank. Empower yet to make a pit stop. It's got 58 litres in the tank as well. But yeah, Marauder and Colonel McCoy swapping positions. Whether that is incurred because of traffic or there was a mistake from Marauder. I think it may have been the latter, judging by the previous lap times. Colonel McCoy did a 2:06.6 on the previous lap, whereas Marauders was a 2:11.7. So a good 5 seconds difference between the two, potentially just a bit of a half spin, which would have cost Marauder that position. We've got Corvette here in front of us, just separating the two LMP1 cars. Marauder diving down the inside into Stavolo. Russell's on the brakes there. It's actually Mr. Van Orman that they've just passed, as they're now coming up behind Smolder in the Aston Martin. And then the next car will be Chloe. It'll be interesting to see if actually Marauder can get past Chloe before the braking zone. It does indeed. Reasonably comfortably there. And it's closed up onto the back of Colonel McCoy. A gap under half a second, as you can see, very close between the two. Marauder using a whole bunch of the hybrid energy to get alongside. He's on the outside for turn 1. He's going to have to go the long way round to try and make the move stick. Instead, he's going for the switchback. See if he can use the hybrid off of the corner. But Colonel McCoy may have saved some of that hybrid energy to help defend on the run down to Eau Rouge. See the gap, about 0.8 of a second already, just in the difference of the hybrid strategies, could pull out quite a significant gap. Marauder will be harvesting energy coming down the Camel Straight here, using some of the wasted energy from the turbo to recover some of the kinetic energy. And both the two LMP1 drivers are getting caught up behind the GTE there. Oh, there's big contact between Marauder and Colonel McCoy. Both of them heavy into the wall, substantial damage for both of them. I think Marauder was just trying to cut underneath the Corvette, but of course Colonel McCoy was there on the inside, which led to the contact, put both of them in the wall. Coxon is now there and is going to effectively jump up into third position. Coming off the exit of the corner here, both of them moving out the way. Coxon goes up into third, Colonel McCoy goes back into fourth place, and Marauder with huge damage has completely lost the front end of that car. There's going to be suspension damage there as well. That is definitely going to be a trip to the pit lane at the end of this lap. I imagine it will be for Colonel McCoy as well. But that Corvette getting caught up behind them, I believe it was Empower, who was every right to be there. The GTE cars are instructed to hold their racing line to make it more predictable. It's just the two LMP1 cars, Colonel McCoy and Marauder, couldn't really make up their minds as to which way they wanted to go through the chicane, as they were both battling for position as well. So obviously they were keen to get past Empower as quickly as possible, but in doing so that's led to very heavy contact. It's very fortunate they didn't actually collect Empower as well in that, as Colonel McCoy goes deep there, and no doubt, as we see, goes into the pit lane. Is that Mr. Van Norman? No! More contact between Mr. Van Norman and one of the other Audi R18s. The Audi into the wall. Mr. Van Norman with some damage to the side of the car. How substantial that damage is, I am unsure, but they're coming up past Marauder as well, who would have been slow because obviously the damage on the front of that car. I think it may have been Kleinstein, may have potentially been the driver. Yeah, it must have been Kleinstein, was that other Audi driver who got collected there with Mr. Van Orman. Wow. What looked like to be a race that was getting a little bit quieter at this midway stage, about half an hour in, has all of a sudden come alive with all sorts of drama involving both the LMP1 and also the GTE classes. Dakuza is now into the pit lane as well again. I believe he's already made a pit stop. I wonder if the time sport actually... No, it doesn't. It doesn't show how many pit stops the drivers have done. You see Logan there in the background of the shot in the Toyota coming on through. Toyota looking very nice and pretty, nice and clean. Touch wood that he doesn't have any incidents, and he can keep that Toyota in very nice condition. But yeah, wow, what drama we are having here at AOR in this Endurance League race of round 4 at Spa-Francorchamps. Leon the sick one still leading the way, 22.5 seconds ahead of Inky Chris in the Porsche 919, who's in second place. His teammate Marauder now down in 6th. He's back out on circuit, so he's got that damage repaired. Has opted to not take any fuel on board. Wonder if he did take tyres, or whether he just decided to just get that damage repaired and get back out onto circuit as quickly as possible. And actually Colonel McCoy, I think, opting for... Actually no, Colonel McCoy has repaired the damage and also taken fuel on board as well. He's got near enough a full tank of fuel by a couple of litres. So Colonel McCoy taking the fuel. I wonder if he did take tyres. I doubt he did, and he's still on the wets that he began the race with. But yeah, just a gap of 2.5 seconds between the two. Both of them back underway at racing speed, but yeah, major drama between the two of those there. And if I was to pin the blame on either of the two drivers, I'd probably say it's on Marauder for that incident, considering Colonel McCoy was there on the inside. He was the lead of the two LMP1 cars, and kind of in those situations you do just have to sometimes sit in behind and wait for the other LMP1 car to go past the GTE traffic first, especially in a chicane like that. His patience is often the better part of valor in those kind of situations, but Marauder sensed an opportunity to move. It almost paid off for him, but it didn't quite in the end, and turned out to be quite a catastrophic mistake for the two. No doubt he'll be very apologetic towards Colonel McCoy, and I think we'll accept any penalty with grace. And once again, we're kind of in a very similar situation to where we were this time just a couple of laps ago, but this time both the two LMP1 cars surviving that. Marauder this time definitely being a little bit more patient, whilst still seeming somewhat eager to try and get past Colonel McCoy. But now that they're clear of the GTE traffic, he's got that opportunity to try and make the move past, using the hybrid coming down towards P1. Almost got up alongside that, and did for a moment, but wasn't close enough to be there for the lunge down the inside into P1. But will he be able to have a look coming into Piff-Paff here? Coming through turn 13, now into turn 14 of Campus. You can see the sun getting low and shining beautifully, reflecting off the surface of the track. Coming now through Stavilo, and then coming through Kerber Porphyry. Off the exit of the turn, coming down on the run towards Blanchimont. Slight uphill initially, and then it starts to come downhill. There's a lot of spray now on this part of the circuit, as you can see. Getting slight frame drops in a couple of places as well. So I apologise for that, but yeah, Marauder this time not quite close enough. It may just have been preserving some of the hybrid energy to use off the exit of turn 1 and on the run along the Kemmel Straight into Lacombe. So we'll stick with these two for the moment, just to see how this one plays out. Just take a very quick look. I say as yeah, Mr. Van Orman, Smolder and Chloe are all fairly close to one another. Doubt there's going to be any lunges for position here as of yet, even though Mr. Van Orman is having a look to the inside of Smolder coming in towards turn 1. And there's not going to be a pass down towards Eau Rouge, and Marauder this time round not close enough. Coming to the chicane at the end of the Kemmel Straight. So we'll jump back to Mr. Van Orman, who is hunting down Smolder, who is hunting down Chloe, coming out the top of Radion there. Now onto the Kemmel Straight. Mr. Van Orman picking up the slipstream of the Aston Martin there in front of him. Doesn't really seem to be closing in that slipstream. He's not going to be close enough to make the lunge unless he goes for a big dive bomb. Smolder slightly earlier on the brakes and actually goes deep into the entry to the chicane. Mr. Van Orman has come up alongside and will get the move done, coming out the exit through turn 9, and is now up into 4th position. So dispatches Smolder with relative ease. Smolder not really putting up too much of a fight there once he realised that he was going deep, and just kind of let Mr. Van Orman go, which is fair enough. Faster of the two drivers. It's better to not lose time fighting for position there, and yeah, just letting him go and try and stick with him, as Mr. Van Orman is now onto the back of Chloe. Isn't going to be close enough for the move here. Logan is also coming into the picture behind as well. We can see the sun is just starting to set off behind the horizon on the hillside, behind the trees. And Mr. Van Orman all over the back of Chloe's M6. Slight lift coming through curb pull freight, and then coming out onto this back straight. Logan is somewhere there. It's actually dropped off quite a bit behind him, in fact, I think. So that's just the battle between the two of them as they come into Blanchimont. Will Mr. Van Orman lift? He does breathe on the throttle a little bit, has to breathe even more as he goes and runs out wide and off the circuit. Obviously wanting to avoid that slowdown penalty, make sure that he doesn't gain an advantage. Chloe is very close to running out wide and goes a little bit deep there, coming through the bus stop chicane. It's on the inside of Mr. Van Orman. Mr. Van Orman was going round the outside and gets the drive off the corner. Chloe running a little bit deep, and there is a puddle between the two corners there, and I think Chloe just got caught in that, which kind of put Mr. Van Orm in prime position to retake that third position as one of the Porsche 919s goes through. Sun continuing to set. We can see the headlights really starting to work now off the reflective surface of the track. Things are probably going to be a little bit more difficult with the spray. Logan, getting very, very aggressive there in the switch between the two cars. Getting caught on the grass. I think that may have just been slightly exaggerated through lag. But he did seem to quite aggressively switch between the two. So now Mr. Van Orm is back in third place. M-Power has closed back up onto the rear of Speedy Go, just 0.7 of a second between the two. Marauder has also managed to close up onto the back of Colonel McCoy, just about half a second between the two, and I think Colonel McCoy may have been caught up by Mali Bacho as Marauder is having a look to the inside of the Audi R18 coming into the bus stop chicane, but Colonel McCoy shuts that door, slamming it shut, and holds onto that fourth position. Marauder settles in behind, but uses a little bit more hybrid to have a little bit of a sniff coming into turn one, but instead settles in behind us. Colonel McCoy very sideways there. Marauder does manage to sneak through and up into fourth position. How they avoided making contact there, I am not entirely sure. Fantastic job for Marauder to hook up the apex there, and Colonel McCoy to hold on to the brakes and avoid making contact. He's managed to recover pretty quickly, still within a second of Marauder after that slight spin, but yeah, that's a change of position between the two. It's kind of McCoy struggling a little bit with the with these wet conditions at the moment. Cleanstein just coming out of the pit lane in his Audi, and there we can see Logan trying to pick up some of the wetter parts of the circuit. Maybe possibly trying to cool down the wet tyres. They're starting to get a little bit hotter. The grip will start to fall away. So let's actually jump up to Speedy Go and Empower, who have swapped positions at some point off camera. It seems like Speedy Go's got some damage on the left front. Not entirely sure if that is 100% representative of what the driving state of his car is actually like, but there is a headlight and also a tail light actually out on that car. So that's going to make things a little bit more difficult to spot lighting up the apexes. Just excuse me for a moment whilst I just took a quick swig of some water. Try and keep the voice nice and fresh. But yeah, Speedy Go now in second place is losing quite a large amount of time to M-Power behind. Mr. Van Orm back up into third. His previous lap times quite a bit quicker than the two drivers in front of him by a good couple of seconds. So if he can keep that pace up, he'll start to reduce that 27.5 second gap that he has to Speedy Go, and may bring himself back into contention later on in the race. Chloe seems pretty settled there in fourth position, and Smolder, having dropped back after letting the position go to Mr. Van Orman earlier, has fallen off the back of Chloe by quite a substantial amount as well, although was quicker on the previous lap. Prasanchek, they're currently in sixth place. It's about 13.5 seconds off the back of Smolder. He's got quite a bit of a gap to Atlas Garian behind. And that is actually one of the other Corvettes. I think that may be Dakuza. Yes, indeed, it is Dakuza. That is the other Corvette that is there in the background. A couple of laps down. So Atlas Garian was the next car, who is 4.5 seconds ahead of Zion. Royalty is about 9 to 10 seconds off the back of Zion. It's got a good 17.5 or so second gap to Mali Bacho behind. So let's jump back up towards the front of the LMP1 field, where Inky Chris 38 seconds now off the back of Leon the Sick One. Leon the Sick One just constantly banging in the 2 minute 3, 2 minute 4 lap times. Very, very solid pace. Quite clearly heads and shoulders above the rest of the drivers in the LMP1 field. He may actually be coming into the pits this time round. He does not. He's got one more lap. So the Audis can do at least one lap on with 3 litres of fuel. So he'll be pitting this time round, where he'll take on a full tank of fuel. I doubt he'll change tyres. The track still looks too wet to actually go onto slicks yet. There doesn't seem to be a dry line that has formed. Inky Chris has still got the best part of 13.5 litres of fuel remaining, so he should be able to go on for another 4 laps or so before he needs to really worry about pit stop. Coxon, it's got 6 litres, double that of Leon the Sick One. Coxon having a relatively quiet race. I think he actually started from the back of the LMP. No, he didn't. I think he was 6th or 7th in the LMP1 field, but he's now got himself up into 3rd after the incident between Marauder and Colonel McCoy a short while ago. It's got quite a big gap to Inky Chris in front, 1 minute and 22 seconds. So it's a good half the length of the circuit. But there's a nice comfortable 45.5 second gap to Marauder behind. No! Inky Chris into the pit lane. Which is interesting because I thought he was going to go a bit further. I just saw that Coxon went up into 2nd place and I panicked for a moment thinking that one of the 2 front runners had disconnected from the session, but they hadn't. Inky Chris is just in to top up the fuel and is back underway. Interested to see actually if there's any real standing water, any puddles on the exit of the pit lane, and kind of get an idea as to what the track saturation situation is actually like. So coming down the hill here, things are looking reasonably good. There does seem to be a slight drying line starting to form. Very slowly, but there is still quite a bit of sheen on the circuit. It's probably quite difficult for you guys to actually see it in the live stream. I can see it here. So it gets very sideways until Lecombe does manage to gather the car back up. Yeah, no real major puddles forming anywhere at the moment. It's just the last few droplets of the rain is still falling from the sky. There's a bit of debris and stones on the circuit on the exit on the inside of turn 10. Someone's been off the track. There's a bit of dirt there that was pulled back onto the track as well. It's going to affect the grip levels. Likewise coming through Pouon. Out the exit, things are looking good. There doesn't seem to be any real big major live track puddles. There's some gravel and stones coming through Piff Paff there, and Campus Corner. Now into Stavelo, again no real major puddles, but there is bits of dirt and gravel dotted around here and there. That's a very slow Ford GT. Now on the run down towards Blanchimont. What is the track conditions like here? Coming through the corner, there's a bit of dirt that you can see there on the outside of the racing line. Then coming into the final chicane, there is that large puddle there on the inside between the 2 corners, but nothing really major on the actual apexes of those 2 turns, and you can see that the sun has pretty much well and truly set now beyond the horizon. So that gives you guys an indication as to what the track state is actually like. There's still quite a bit of spray being kicked up by the cars, so I certainly don't feel like it's time to be switching onto slick tyres as of yet. Track looking absolutely fantastic lit up in these night conditions. Yeah, we can see Leon the second one putting a lap down on one of the other Audis as he runs through Blanchimont towards the bus stop chicane. Getting things slowed down quite nicely, riding that sausage curb a little bit, riding that second sausage curb quite substantially, kicking up those inside wheels. Does manage to hold on to that. These cars are quite light, and you don't want to be hitting those too hard at too high a speed, because yeah, if the air catches the underside on the floor, it could potentially lift the car up over onto its side. There is that giant shark fin on the back, which is a key part to the aerodynamics on these LMP1 cars. They produce quite a bit of side aero and help to straighten out the cars when they get into a kind of sideways slide, which is one of the reasons why they're a little bit funny and a little bit easy to recover when getting into a sideways situation. So obviously once the car gets some angle of attack, air starts to hit that shark fin, which does start to kind of act against the sideways motion, and helps to settle the rear a little bit. And then obviously if you do also kick in the hybrid energy as well, it kind of turns the car into a four-wheel drive car, which helps you to straighten the car up in a slide as well. So there is that facility available for them to use in order to correct any moments that they may have. But that shark fin is also useful when running in a normal straight line. It just helps to kind of stabilize any turbulent air coming off around the cockpit and off over the front arches and over the roof of the car. Just kind of helps settle it down and guide it back over that rear wing quite nicely. Very, very advanced aero that are on these LMP1 cars in this modern era, and especially that Audi R18 as well in 2016. There's effectively tunnels underneath the car and so many winglets. It looked like Leon the sick one there scraped the wall. We saw a kick up of sparks on the inside. Wonder if he's picked up any damage from that. But we're starting to see a lot less spray now coming off these cars, so I think a drying line is starting to form and the track is starting to dry out. So that's going to obviously heavily affect the wet tyres, cause them to start overheating unless they can find some water to actually cool those tyres back down, which is something that you can do here in Project Cars 2. If you can find the live track puddles or some wetter parts of the circuit and run through those, you will be able to reduce the amount of heat build-up and help cool down the tyres a little bit. I saw that Logan's well offline, exploring the outer limits of the circuit, obviously trying to find some wetter parts potentially to do exactly that tyre cooling. But it seems like Leon the sick one is quite happy to run on the drying line at the moment, help dry that out a little bit more, persevere with the conditions of his tyres. That is, unless in his stop he did actually go for a set of slick tyres and was just kind of tiptoeing his way around the circuit a little bit in the early stage. So he's going past one of the Ford GTs. He's got a gap 1 minute and 14 odd seconds to Inky Chris behind, and Leon the sick one continues his way round. As Marauder is now into the pit lane, no doubt to be switching onto the slick tyres, but the pit lane itself does actually look really quite wet still, so we need to be careful of that. And that's another reason actually why Marauder is into the pit lane, is because he once again does not have a front end to that Porsche. It's made contact with the wall somewhere along the line or with another car to incur some more hefty damage, and Colonel McCoy is now back up into third position. Coxon is there in fourth, but I believe Coxon has recently been through the pit lane, considering he's got 46 litres of fuel in that Audi fuel tank. which holds about 50 odd litres in total, whereas Colonel McCoy still got 26 litres from the earlier pit stop that he had after the heavy contact between himself and Marauder. So Marauder no doubt will be switching onto the slick tyres, also taking on a full tank of fuel and repairing any damage that he has. So it'll be key to actually watch his lap times to see what he'll be doing. Leon, the sick one, seems to be doing pretty good with the high 59s at the moment in these track conditions. It's pretty close once again to the back of the 4GT. There is a little bit of spray still being kicked up in a couple of places. He's venturing offline a little bit. So it's nothing too major. That 4GT though is really struggling for grip. Who was that? It was Royalty. For a second I almost thought it was Speedy Go, but we just saw that Royalty had gone through the Piff Path, turns 13 and 14, Campus Corner, whereas Speedy Go was just going into those when we actually picked them up. So I wonder if Royalty will be coming into the pit lane at the end of this lap. Marauder and Cleanstein going at it between the two. Marauder coming out of the pit lane has gone and lost the car. It's just about managed to keep it out the wall. I imagine. Oh no, there's big damage there for one of the Corvettes. Who is that? It's not Empower. That must be. It is Dakuza. He's managed to get back onto the circuit, but he's now missing a rear wing. Quite substantial damage to the back of that Corvette there. It's missing a rear taillight, as you can see. I wonder if that was caused by Marauder spinning and leading Dakuza into a bit of a panic in there for a mistake. But yeah, Marauder managed to keep it out of the wall. Wonder if he is in on those slick tyres now and just caught a wetter part of the circuit, possibly the curb that just kind of spun him round. It wouldn't surprise me if the curb is still wet and he's on the slicks. He's not going to have much grip there. But Chloe is now into the pit lane. 25 litres of fuel left in that M6. Mr. Van Ommen really struggling there to try and get the car slowed down and into turn 1. 36-second gap to Speedy Go, who is just off the back of Empower. These two are actually battling for position now, as well as we can see. Speedy Go is all over the back of Empower's Corvette, forcing Empower to go defensive, getting the switch back on the exit of corner of no name, turn 11. He's got the inside line on the run down towards Puon. He's got Logan there behind in the prime seat. Oh, a little bit of contact between the two. That's going to push Empower out wide off onto the exit of Puon corner. And that is Speedy Go up into pole position. I'm not totally sure whether that was Speedy Go turning in a little bit too late, taking a Nico Rosberg line, or if that was Empower turning in a little bit early and making contact there. That's quite unfortunate between the two. But that is Speedy Go now up into second place as Logan is off doing a bit of rally crossing through the gravel on the inside there. On the outside, sorry. Yeah, now Empower down into second place. We've got Atlas Garin in the pit lane. So is Xeon, as we can see. Dakuza also in the pit lane, no doubt to repair the damage at the rear of his car. Atlas Garin, sorry, Xeon going on to the next pit crew, trying to find out which one is actually his and through process of elimination. Has fortunately managed to find it. Yeah, Marauder now closing up onto the back of Cleanstein. So Cleanstein and Marauder were very close together until Marauder made that mistake into the Lacombe chicane. But Marauder has managed to close that gap back up within the lap or so. I think potentially, or if Marauder is on those drier tyres and Cleanstein is really struggling, there is that change of position. Marauder just sailing on through and up into fifth place. Cleanstein not really too much of an answer after making a mistake coming out of curb pulled through. It's kind of coming back. We've got some one of the front runners coming through. Ooh, a little bit of contact there between the two, potentially between Cleanstein and the other driver. Is it Colonel McCoy? It is indeed Colonel McCoy. Be interested to see what Marauder's lap time is this time around. A 2:03.2. So not a little bit representative, but not overly representative. Once again, Clean Steam really struggling with the handling of the car. I can't quite remember off the top of my head what the lap times were these guys were doing in qualifying, as that would be a good identifier as to whether these guys are actually on slick tyres or whether they are still on the wets. Inky Chris is still heading on around that. Marauder, new personal best that time as he gets caught up alongside one of the Corvettes. Does manage to get past and is going to lose the rear end of the car again. Out the exit of turn 9. Slight tap of the wall there just for good measure. Doesn't come too far back onto the circuit when reversing, but that's him now back down into 6th place. Losing the position to Clean Steam. That's going to be very frustrating for him. Potentially just pushing that a little bit too hard. And the tyres really struggling. See if we can identify what's going on with Leon the sick one, what kind of tyres he's on. It looks like I can see treaded tyres whenever we go underneath the spotlight. Down in the down through the tops of the wheel wells. But what we see here in the director and broadcaster in terms of the tyre pattern isn't always 100% accurate to what the drivers are actually on. I don't think they've made the switch onto the slick tyres as of yet. I think they are still on the wets. Leon the sick one just managing the trying to manage the temperatures. Obviously with the time of day now going into the night as well, the track temperature will also be dropping as well, so that's going to help the wet tyres if the drivers are still on them. Leon the sick one closing up towards some traffic, not going to be pitting this time round. A little bit of wheel spin there coming out of the final chicane. He's got an NMP1 car up in front of him and then a few Corvettes. Oh, we just about be able to skip past one into a Rouge. Get the next coming down the Kemmel Straight. I'll be picking up the slipstream of the Audi R18 in front of him, who will need to move off the racing line and let Leon the sick one through relatively soon without impeding him. I'm sure he will do so on the exit of this corner, possibly just stay right and let him go. He does indeed. So Leon the sick one on his way, unhindered. A nice little courteous flash of the lights to say thank you. Brzancek now into the pit lane, as well as Smolder taking on a full tank of fuel. Is Brzancek doing the same, or is he just changing tyres? He is taking more fuel as well. So he's just seeing the amount of fuel skip from 50 odd litres up to 60, and you can see it's continuing to grow there as well. And the car's just been raised up onto the tracks. We can see the tyre change going on there. Pit crew, one driver manning the guns, and the other drivers, the other engineers or mechanics actually handling the wheels, getting them attached. So no doubt Brzancek is going to be onto the slick tyres at this stage. Atlas Garen is relatively close on the back of Zion. And that Ford GT of Atlas Garen looks like it's been through the wars. Got a smashed headlight at the front. Comes through at 2:35. So a very slow lap, but I think Atlas Garen was on the pits the previous time round, and that was an out lap. Fastest man out on the circuit at the moment is Inky Chris. 157.4 to Leon Sick One's 158.3. Chris getting caught up behind Smolder there. coming through Pulon. Let's actually have a look to see what the fastest lap time of the race actually is, and that was Inky Chris on the previous lap. Very interesting. So now we should start to see the lap times plummet, as the track should be pretty much free of water. Obviously this time round Inky Chris is not going to be anywhere near close enough to his previous lap time, as he got caught up behind the GTE car going through Pulon. Just catching the grass a little bit there in the braking zone for the bus stop chicane, but manages to keep it on the circuit until he gets out to the exit. Just caught that last sausage curb on the inside, going through the left-hander, which pushed him out wide. Nice smooth run through Rouge and Radion. Nice smooth run down Camel Straight, as you would expect. Mali Bacho was there 10th place in the GTE class up in front. Should be able to sneak past round the outside through turn 9. Very nicely done. Mali Bacho just facilitated that pass and allowed him to sneak on through. And again, Inky Chris finding a little bit of GTE traffic through the mid corner of Pulon. But he's on his way. Next car he's got to pass is Chloe in the M6. Chloe moving well out the way there. Again, Inky Chris not really anywhere near his previous fastest lap time. Neil on the sick one, still cracking on ahead. 1 minute and 19 seconds up the road. Conor McCoy is now only 10 seconds behind. So that gap has shrunk quite considerably. I don't think Conor McCoy... Yeah, Conor McCoy's due another pit stop relatively soon. Yeah, the sick one is... Well, there is Conor McCoy going into the pits now with 11 litres of fuel. So he'll be going up for a top up. And with the race juice, and potentially a change of tyres as well. Stick with him to see if that happens as he stops nicely in his pit box. The fuel hose goes in goes the fuel. Just a short splash of fuel. Actually, no, there's 43 litres there. So just 49 litres. Seems like the speedo and the amount of fuel that is registered there is a little bit behind the actual animations. He's now heading back out onto the circuit, which will no doubt be a set of slick tyres. And indeed they are. So I'm not sure if Conor McCoy is going to be the first man actually onto the slick tyres in the LMP1 class. As Kleinstein is getting very sideways there. See, he's not far off the back of Marauder. Two drivers are still going at it, battling for position. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what lap times Conor McCoy can do now. Obviously, this one isn't going to be representative as it's an out lap. Coxon has now resumed in third position. I wonder if Coxon actually is on a set of stick tyres. It looks like they're grooved to me in the spotlights. Oh, getting caught up behind the Ford GT there. Kind of did semi look like the Ford GT was going to facilitate the pass and then not. GTE drivers have to be careful with that, making sure that they're communicating quite clearly with the LMP1 cars as to where they want them to pass. Leon the sick one, a full lap ahead of Coxon. Inky Chris still that 1 minute 15 odd seconds behind. I think that's Marauder that Leon the sick one has put another lap down on. Around the outside, Leon the second one goes with Chloe. Speedy Go was it to the pit lane, but he's not in the pit lane. Oh dear, he seems to be stuck right on the pit entrance. This is very much an Austin Powers moment where he's going forwards and backwards and can't really go anywhere. He may have to reset to the track in order to clear himself from that and get himself in a position where he can actually go into the pit lane. That is unless someone could give him a friendly tap at the front end of the car to actually rotate it round and allow him to actually get down the pit lane. But that is disastrous for Speedy Go. He was leading the GTE class. M-Power has now gone through. Mr. Van Orman will no doubt go through very shortly, and indeed he does. Just as I was saying that, the next one will be Chloe. Speedy Go is stuck there. Doesn't seem like he's got the engine running. Maybe he does. Oh, Speedy Go is just retired from the race back to the pit lane when things are going so well for him. Devastating news. He was having such a good race there at the front end of the field, was battling for the race win within the GTE class. And then unusual set of circumstances. I'm not entirely sure what exactly happened there. I can only speculate that he made a mistake going into the pit lane and got stuck. He wasn't able to get out of that position and instead has had to retire from the race. So we're now only down to 17 drivers in total. 7 LMP1 and 10 GTEs. That's absolutely disastrous for Speedy Go. Really do feel for him with the performance that he was putting in. So I jump up to one of the other drivers, getting a little bit of lag here with Inky Chris. As we can see, things seem to be better for other drivers. Leon the sick one looks to be quite a bit smoother going through the P1, as does the cars around him. So I think that just might be Inky Chris, just his own connection, lagging slightly there. Coxon still resuming the way in third position in the LMP1 field with Conan McCoy there in fourth place. Marauder 1 minute and 17 seconds behind in fifth. Getting caught up there behind a Corvette going through. Oh, keep it out the wall, mate. It does, but that is another spin for Marauder. We've seen him have quite a few of those. Was able to get back out onto the circuit though relatively quickly without having to wait for anyone else, but that will just add to the frustration for Marauder. I should think Kleinstein isn't too far behind. 8.5 seconds after that spin, and then Logan 1 minute and 8 seconds off the back of Kleinstein. Struggling a little bit in that Toyota. M-Power leading the way in the GTE class with a 34-second lead to Mr. Van Orman behind after Speedy Go's retirement. Chloe is now up into third place, 21.5 seconds behind Mr. Van Orman. Further 29 seconds behind Chloe is Smolder. There we see him in the Aston Martin, just coming out onto the back straight towards Blanchimont. Bajanchik is there in 5th place, driving away in that Ford GT, leading Xeon, who is there in that Corvette immediately behind. So there's a battle here between these two drivers for 5th position. So let's stick with these. So Atlas Guerin is in 7, Royalty is in P8, Mali Bacho is in 9th position, and then Dakuza is in 10th place. And that is a bit of a rundown across the entire field. Xeon is here in the slipstream of Bzanchek, coming on the run towards Blanchimont. Be sizing him up for a potential move coming into the final bus stop chicane. Xeon just lifting out a little bit there with the dirty air. Make sure that he doesn't run out wide. Two drivers navigating the final chicane quite nicely, but Xeon's a little bit tighter on the exit there. Could give him potentially the better run off. As Bzanchek looked to go a little bit deep. Bzanchek going slightly defensive coming in towards turn 1. A spit of flame out the side exhausts of his Ford GT. Xeon, good run there through turn 1. Both of the two drivers getting a pretty equal drive off the exit of the corner on the run down towards Eau Rouge. Xeon needs to get a good run through here, try and stick relatively close, get the better run coming out the top. Just a little bit too much of a lift. Do have an LMP1 car coming through, which is Logan in the Toyota TS050. But that could have potentially been Xeon if he didn't leave us. Oh, he's going for the move, he's going for the lunge down the inside into the Locom chicane. The two of them are side by side, navigating through the chicane now. Xeon's going to have the inside line for the exit, the final right-hander, and he does manage to get himself up into 5th position. Very good lunge there by him from a car length or 2 back. Bzanchek saw the move coming and gave him the room on the inside. Testament to Xeon. Even though it did initially look like a slight dive bomb, managed to get the car slowed down and hooked up to the apex quite nicely, and gave plenty of room to Bzanchek on the outside for the inside for the next corner. So brilliant move there by Xeon to get himself up into 5th position. And we now got Mali Bacho is hunting down Royalty. This is Ferrari 488 versus the Ford GT. The old Ford versus Ferrari story in the World Endurance Championship with Le Mans that is taking place this weekend. And I'm sure a number of people are probably watching the final qualifying session for the Le Mans 24 hours, which is actually live now as well. We'll be 20 odd minutes into that session. So it would have started at 9 o'clock local time here in the UK, which would have been 10 o'clock over local time actually at Le Mans, and then I know the session goes on until midnight. So it's a 2-hour qualifying session for them. And obviously Toyota will be looking to put themselves in P1 and 2. The privateer non-hybrids will be looking to try and get themselves ahead of the Toyotas to try and upset their date and try and take the challenge to them in the 24-hour race that kicks off at 2 PM British summertime on Saturday afternoon. So it'll be 3 PM, I believe, Central European time, or at least local time over at Le Mans. So, yep, no doubt you guys will be watching that. Unfortunately, I'll be missing out on that because I'll be at a stag do over in Bristol. So I will not, unfortunately, catch any of it live. But I'll be trying to catch up throughout the week as and when I can. So we've got Alex Guerin taking another trip through the pit lane. 62 litres of fuel on board. This is pulling into his pit box as his chief mechanic waves him in to the spot. And he's just taking some fuel on board. And Royal T has seemed to have made a mistake. Mali Bacho has managed to get the position. That happened in the very short time that we were looking away at Atlas Guerin. So Mali Bacho is now up into 8th place. The Motor Royalty down into 9th. Ferrari coming out ahead of Ford in that instance, despite there being a couple of Ferraris in front of Mane Bacho. You see Zion. He's got some LMP1 traffic for company. Zion running out wide there off the circuit, not entirely sure what that was about exactly. Potentially just scared by one of the LMP1 cars. Who was that? It wasn't Leon, the sick one. Obviously not Inky Chris. May have been Coxon. I think it was indeed Coxon that was coming through the picture. He's got Marauder there in front of him. Some big gaps in the LMP1 field at the moment. I'm pretty sure at this point of the race it's pretty safe to say that all the cars will be out on slick tyres. There's no way in hell that they'll be continuing on with the wet tyres in these conditions, with the track now being dry and with 1 hour and 6 to 7 minutes remaining. So let's actually do an update as to the pit strategy situation. Leon, the second one, has only been through the pits once so far. He's got 10 litres of fuel remaining, so he should be able to go on for another 3-4 laps before needing to make his pit stop. Inky Chris has got 20 litres of fuel, has also only made a single stop thus far, and I say we'll probably be able to go on for another 6-7 laps, but he'll probably prove me wrong and probably pit a little bit earlier with some fuel to spare. Although actually I imagine he'll be wanting to try and run as long as possible in order to only try and do 2 stops here in this race rather than the 3 stops that no doubt the Audis will be needing to do. Coxon, he's got 16 litres of fuel in his tank, so things are looking pretty good for him. The Audis do use less fuel per lap than the Toyota and the Porsche, but they do have a smaller fuel tank. But Coxon with the best part of 15.5 litres there. It's not too dissimilar to what Inky Chris has got with 18.5 litres, only 3 litres difference between the two. It's a gap of about 53 seconds, as we can see from the splits. He's got a gap of 7 seconds to Colonel McCoy behind, and he has 34 litres of fuel remaining. And there is Marauder behind them, but I believe Marauder is a lap down. Yeah, so Marauder a lap down on Colonel McCoy now. And those two are obviously battling away earlier pretty ferociously. But yeah, Colonel McCoy, 33 litres. He should be good for one more stop before the end of this race. Obviously he took a stop out of sync earlier to repair the damage after the incident between himself and Marauder. Marauder's got 30 odd litres, stopped twice, should be able to go on for quite a bit longer. Will need to make one more final stop before the end of the race. Cleanstein has got 12 litres and also a smashed front headlight, so he'll be needing to make 2 more stops in this race. Logan's got 26 litres of fuel left in his car, so I'm sure that he'll only need to stop one more time. Empower has got 53 litres, and I know that the GTE cars will be making 2 stops in this race. That is pretty much dead certain. Empower leading the way. Actually a 1 minute lead to Chloe in second place. It's got 59 litres as well. Smolder has got 63, as we can see, so a bit more than the other two in front of him. Mr. Van Orman has fairly recently been through the pit lane, which would explain why he'll be in 4th position, and has got 86 litres to his name. He should be able to go the remainder of the race distance with that, but that will probably could possibly be one to keep an eye on, depending on the fuel usage per lap on that Corvette. Zion It's got 53.5 litres of fuel, so we'll be needing to make another stop. Brzancek, best part of 60 litres. Probably need to stop again. Atlas Gerin should be good for the remainder of the race as well. And there's an LMP1 car there, somewhere alongside him, which will be not Brzancek, it'll be Kleinstein. Mali Bacho, 38.5 litres of fuel in that Ferrari, so we'll be needing to make one more stop before the end of the race. D'Acusa has got 60. He'll probably need to make one more stop. He did pit out the sequence earlier on, has had a number of trips through the pit lane as well. That's a good 5 minutes or so, just under, off the back of the GTE class leader. And then Royalty, also in a similar position where it's pitted out of sync, had a lot of trouble in the race. Should be able to go the remainder of the race distance on those 86 litres that he does have in the fuel tank in that Ford GT, but he is a good 43.5 seconds off the back of D'Acusa. But if D'Acusa needs to make pits, he should be able to make it to the end in 9th position overall. But Colonel McCoy closing up onto the back of Coxon, taking a substantial amount of time out of Coxon on the previous lap. We can see the difference there, and you can see that Colonel McCoy is now right up underneath the rear wing of Coxon, having a look down the inside, coming into the bus stop chicane side by side between the two as we go through the two turns, very nearly swiping each other. Now both of them getting onto the hybrid. Who's going to use more coming out of the final turn? Who has more available to them? Colonel McCoy is going to have the inside line, but Coxon coming across the nose of Colonel McCoy in turn 1. Coming out through the exit, Colonel McCoy slipping into the slipstream behind, tucking in as Marauder is into the pit lane behind them. Colonel McCoy, both of them running relatively similar hybrid strategies coming off of turn 1, but will there be an extra dump of curves between either of the two drivers coming down the Camel Straight now, or will things be relatively close between the two? It's close between the two, but Colonel McCoy's got the slipstream, looking to the inside, coming into the Lacombe chicane, both of them going a little bit deep. Colonel McCoy has managed to get the position as Coxon has had a half spin and gifted that third place to Colonel McCoy. That is going to be frustrating for him. He was doing a relatively good job of trying to defend that position and hold on to it for as long as he possibly can. But Colonel McCoy has managed to come out on top and take that third place. Coxon will be coming into the pit lane in a few laps time anyway to take on some fuel. Should be his second stop of the race, I believe, and he'll need to make one more before the end of the session. And Leon the Sick One is into the pit lane. So the race leader into the pits, no doubt will be coming in just to take a full tank of fuel. I doubt he'll need to take tyres, but the option is going to be there for him if he so wishes. He's got a good 1 minute lead over Inky Chris, but obviously we're going to see that gap decrease quite rapidly as Inky Chris is out on the circuit still navigating around, whilst Leon is sat stationary in the pit lane having his fuel topped up. It does look like he's changing tyres, so what does it? We saw the animation there from them changing tyres, so he may potentially have done so, but I'm not entirely sure. That pit stop did look pretty quick, so I think he may not have, and just we were just seeing the pit crew animation there working for him. But either way, he's back out of the pit lane, 35 seconds up the road from Inky Chris. Inky Chris coming down towards Blanchimont as the sky is starting to become light again, as we are running a full 24-hour day and night cycle here in this race. 59 minutes remaining. Oh, Inky Chris getting a little bit deep there, getting caught out into the water, out into that live chat puddle that's there, out on the exit of the turn. That would have very heavily affected his grip, but he's back underway. But yeah, the sun is starting to creep up towards the horizon fairly soon. We'll see it peak up above the trees that surround the forest, or should I say, are included in the forest that surround Spa-Francorchamps. You can't really have trees surrounding a forest. I mean, I guess you can, but trees tend to be part of a forest. Kleinstein now into the pit lane to take on a full tank of fuel. He'll be needing to make one more stop at the end, so will Leon the sick one as well. They will not be able to go the full race, the remaining race distance with that Audi fuel tank. Whereas Inky Chris could very well do so, potentially. But even still, I think as it stands at the moment, even if Leon the sick one does come in for the splash and dash later on in the race, he'll still be some way ahead of Inky Chris and hold on to that race lead unless something substantial happens in Leon's race. Coxon is now into the pit lane with 6 litres of fuel remaining to top up. Take on a fuel tank. Colonel McCoy is still circulating around, as we can see. Logan still out there as well. He's actually up into 5th position. He's actually got ahead of Kleinstein, and Kleinstein is right there behind him. So there's been a change of positions there between those two drivers. Logan possibly interesting. I was going to say potentially for the first time this race, getting himself out of that final position in the LMP1 class, but he's just gone and handed the position back to Kleinstein by running out very wide, coming through the that turn 10. Empower still leading the way ahead of Chloe. A minute and 5 seconds between the two of them. So she'll ride on board with the Corvette. Empower as he comes up out through the crest of Radion onto the Kemmel Straight. You can definitely see the sky starting to get lighter. There's a bit more ambient light in the air. See the trees, they're not just a black outline, black silhouette against the dark night sky anymore. Effectiveness of those headlights is decreasing. Come into turn 10. It's just the off-track areas that still have some water remaining. The actual racing surface of the track seems to be near enough bone dry. No doubt it certainly will be on the racing line, and that will be gripping up quite nicely, so the lap times will continue to improve, especially in these kind of conditions as well, with the sun starting to rise. Bring a little bit of track temperature back up slightly, but still relatively cool ambient temperature, allowing the engines to run at a nice effective rate. You get slightly more horsepower in cooler ambient temperatures. Should I say the engine produces a little bit more power easily. And now actually coming into the sun, into the bus stop chicane, there you can see the sun starting to peer over the horizon. So that could potentially affect drivers in some parts of the circuit, various parts around the lap. They'll be fine on the run down to a Rouge though. Sun blinding them there isn't going to be an issue. So Empower quite nicely through a Rouge and Radion. And out the top there, Leon the second one still circulating around, as is all the other drivers. We've got 16 remaining after 21 starters, so we've lost 5 drivers from the race. Logan is now into the pit lane. Looks like he may have a little bit of damage on the front left of that Toyota. So potentially in to repair that damage. He's got a good 14 litres fuel remaining. He's obviously going to top that up to the maximum fuel tank capacity for the remainder of the race. He should be able to go the remainder of that race distance, as Inky Chris is now into the pit lane. He would not be able to do one more lap with those 2.3 litres that we are seeing indicated in the speedo there. So he is in the pit lane to make his stop, get the full tank of fuel, and yeah, the Toyota and the Porsche should be able to do about 50 odd minutes. So they may need to do a bit of fuel saving. Either that or they'll opt for a quick splash and dash at the end. Inky Chris on his way. Back out, Colonel McCoy. Still circulating round, but I believe he's a lap down on Inky Chris. Just catching the puddle there slightly. Did Colonel McCoy just brushing the very edge of it. Would have pulled a little bit of water though out onto the circuit. And actually, Colonel McCoy, no, he's not a lap down on Inky Chris. It's very close between the two. In fact, only 10 seconds between the pair of them, despite the drama and events that Colonel McCoy has endured in this race. That may potentially be a slowdown penalty for him though, coming through that chicane there. That chicane there, out the top of Radion there. Coxon, still going round. Putting a little bit of water, it seems. It's one of the spots where the drivers will be blinded by that low-lying sun. Comes through Blanchemont quite nicely. And on towards the bus stop chicane. There you can see how blinding it is, and he's having to give the inside to the recovering Ford GT. I wonder if there was a little bit of contact there. It sounded a little bit awkward. Coxon's end coming through the corner and off it. Still he's continuing on his way. Don't get too close to the wall there. Very, very wide coming through Radion. Very unusual line there. Manages to keep it within the confines of the circuit. Getting that past the Ford GT relatively nicely. Sun just about starting to peer over the trees there on the run towards the turn 11, but nothing major. Nearly flat out through Pouon for Coxon in the drying conditions, and then it's having to lift out of it, picking up a slowdown penalty, running a little bit wide in his attempt to take the corner near flat out. Out all over the curbs there on the exit of Stavolo, and again having to slow through Paul Frey. There you can see the low sun that is climbing higher into the sky, so there will become a less of a problem as each lap passes by. Obviously that's going to increase the track temperature, which could be quite nice for some of the drivers. It will help to dry out the off-track areas of the circuit as well, so there'll be more grip available out there if any drivers do make a mistake and venture out there. So let's take a look at the penalties that our drivers have. Leon the sick one with a 1 second penalty to his name. Inky Chris with 3 seconds, and Power's got 6 seconds at the head of the GTE field. Chloe's got 2 seconds. Mr. Van Orman also has 2 second penalty, and Zion has a 1 second penalty as well. So Some relatively small ones here at Spa in comparison to some of the other circuits that we have seen. But with all the gaps between all the drivers as well, they should hold on to their positions unless things start to clear up. But Chloe's into the pits, topping up on fuel for what's needed for the remainder of this 47-minute race. 47 minutes and 40 odd seconds. Logan going past, you can hear in the background in the Toyota. A little bit deep there into turn 1. It's off underway again. Where's Inky Chris? Just coming out of turn 10, Brussels hairpin. Now through turn 11, down the hill. Passing Mali Bacho. Past one of the Corvettes. It could be Dakusa actually. Indeed it is Dakusa. Mali Bacho is 3 seconds off the back of Dakusa in fact. And actually Atlas Garin is only just over a second up the road. So these 3 GTE drivers have all come in fairly close to one another. Seems like Dakusa, man on a mission, closing up onto the back of Atlas Garin. Certainly judging by the previous lap time. The fact that Dakusa is closing up onto Atlas Garin fairly considerably in the run towards the bus stop chicane. Hooking up the curb quite nicely. That's all over the back of the Ford GT in front of him. Coming off the final turn, I doubt Atlas Garin is probably going to defend this one too much. He's going to defend the inside line though, forcing Dakusa to go around the outside, but Dakusa is doing exactly that, leaving space on the inside. Very nicely done by Dakusa to slot himself up into 7th position. Atlas Garin didn't make it too easy for him, defending that inside line. Still trying to fight the corner a little bit, but Dakusa just got the good run coming off the exit. His tyres just maybe in a slightly better condition, potentially slightly less damage, and just losing that position. So Atlas Garin now in 8th position, Mali Bacho 6 seconds down the road. You can see that Dakusa much better lap times. Good 7 seconds. Excuse me, 7 seconds clear of Atlas Garin on the previous lap. Brzanczak will be the next target, but he is more than a lap ahead of Dakusa. So we need to unlap himself and then do a fair bit more work to get there. Smolder is now up into 2nd place with Chloe's recent pit stop. Chloe resumes 3rd, 4.5 seconds behind Smolder. 2 were fairly close together at the beginning of the race, but the gap increased between the 2 as the race went on. Chloe just having the better pace. There is Leon the sick one. Continuing on with best part of 32 litres of fuel. Inky Chris in 2nd with good 52 litres. I'll be looking to carry that Porsche to the end of the race without making another pit stop, but Colonel McCoy is actually there, 1.5 seconds off behind. I see a few people are still lurking around. If you are in the live chat, do say hello. If you do have any questions about any of the cars that are here racing, any of the drivers, feel free to shout, as Colonel McCoy is having a look at Leon the Inky Chris in towards the Lacombe chicane, and Inky Chris concedes the position. Colonel McCoy now up into 2nd place. Inky Chris is still there lurking. Be looking to get a good run coming off the exit. Turn 9 here down the hill. Evidently not using too much of the hybrid. Kind of McCoy using a little bit more and pulling that gap out. Oh no, Inky Chris! Save it, save it, save it! Keep it out the wall! Manages to gather it back up there. Got a little bit sideways on the exit of turn 10 and just went out onto the grass. Kind of went into a bit of a half spin. Did manage to gather it back up though, but that's going to cost him a good 4 seconds. Losing the time to Cunham McCoy in the Audi. Running out a little bit wide there as well. Out of turn 16. They come through turn 17. And then turn 18. Black Panther asking, what is my favourite corner from Spa? Ooh. That's a good question, actually. Possibly... Oof. I think Chris there backing out the throttle for some reason. I'm not too sure. That's a really good question. I think possibly either Lacombe or Broxell's corner, turn 10. One of those, well, that chicane complex of 3 corners, which I think Chris has just gone through, or this corner that he's coming down here into. It's probably one of my favourite turns. I know the bus stop chicane and Eau Rouge and Radion are kind of iconic corners, so is Pouon as well. But the bus stop chicane is... I don't know, sometimes I find that I can struggle with it. Eau Rouge and Radion are just kind of flat out, and providing you get the line right, you're all good there. And then, oh, Inky Chris, no! He's gonna make heavy contact with the wall! Distracting me from talking about corners here at Spa. Inky Chris into the wall in 3rd position. That is going to be heavy damage to the front of his car. You can see he's gone and lost the front nose. No doubt he's going to have suspension damage with that as well. Just lost the rear end of the car coming out the exit of turn 14 Campus Corner. Very swiftly found himself hitting the tyre barrier on the left hand side. That's going to be major frustration for him, but that is going to be key potentially to him losing 2nd position to Colonel McCoy. He'll be into the pits to repair the damage. Maybe a splash of fuel just to be safe if he's potentially worried about his fuel situation. We know that Colonel McCoy is going to be into the pit lane relatively soon to make his final stop to get the fuel that he needs to see himself to the end of the race. But yeah, major incident there for Inky Chris that could potentially cost him 2nd position. It looks like he is taking a little bit of fuel on board just to be safe, just to make sure he can go to the end, get that damage repaired. But yeah, wow, drama again, as we've seen. And actually Smolder and Chloe are relatively close together, 1.5 seconds between the two. But just coming back to the corner situation, yeah, the Rouge and Radion, kind of iconic, but in most cars isn't really too much of an issue unless it's got very little downforce. Pouon's quite good, but I do sometimes struggle with the corner. Sometimes I can end up just misjudging it or making a mistake. And then La Source is obviously another iconic corner here at Spa. And that one, some cars can be a little bit tricky to really hook up and 100% optimize the line and the run through. So yeah, I'd say the Lacombe chicane or Bruxelles corner, turn 10. Probably my favourite turns on this circuit, but Smolder in third position. Actually has Mr. Van Olmen for company. There in that Corvette that's immediately behind. Oh, a slight mistake there from Smolder. Just the car just snagging away from him slightly as he was turning into the first apex of that bus stop chicane. That's allowed Mr. Van Olmen to just close up by another tenth of a second. Is Mr. Van Olmen going for the move down the inside, coming into the La Source hairpin? Smolder giving him the room, not really putting up too much of a fight there, giving up that third place. Mr. Van Olmen pops himself up onto that final step of the GTE class podium. Mr. Van Olmen, previous lap time, head and shoulders above Smolder actually. 2 minutes 17 to a 2 minute 24, so 6 seconds difference between the two, there or thereabouts. So it was only a matter of time before Mr. Van Olmen did retake that third position. And now Chloe is going to be the next driver up the road. 3.5 to 4 seconds difference between the two. And Colonel McCoy, this will be his final lap of this stint. He'll be into the pit lane to top up on fuel. He should be able to go the remainder of the race distance, I would have thought, on that one fuel tank. Being on the sick one, 22 litres. He'll no doubt be needing to come into the pit lane before the end of the race just one more time. But yeah, Conor McCoy will be coming into the pits, doing a little bit of lifting and coasting here, potentially worried about how much fuel he is using and actually making it to the pit lane and his pit box. Obviously, once you get to the pit lane, you then got to get onto the limiter. And that does also sap quite a bit of fuel. It's being sat on the limiter. Coming down the pit lane, that he did not want. A slight scrape of the wall there. No doubt it would just be kind of making final adjustments to his race strategy to optimise it for his pit stop. Inky Chris 50 seconds down the road. It'll be interesting to see how close those two drivers come out to one another. It seems like Colonel McCoy is just going for fuel only, not opting for the yeah, just going for fuel, not opting for a tyre change. So where is Inky Chris? Inky Chris is just coming out of curb at Paul Freight, coming down the run through turn 17 now, then into Blanchimont. So it's going to be a fair gap between the two actually, good 28.5 seconds. So Inky Chris has gone and lost the position after that contact with the barrier and that mistake that he had. And Inky Chris is looking at a net third position here. Unless Colonel McCoy has a big mistake, he's kind of messed up the Lacombe chicane a little bit there, riding all over the curves and running out a little bit wide. So it's quite unfortunate for him. Black Panther asking how do the point system work here. So yeah, at Austin you scored 9 points, it would seem, in the GT-AM class, and I believe the GTE-AM drivers get the points of both the overall GT class position, so that's both GTE Pro and GTE-AM combined, but then also the addition of separate GTE-AM points, which would be the reason why you would have got 9. So from that I can't distinguish what position it was that you actually finished in, but that is how many points you did score for that. I know that in the LMP1 class, for the so I'm just double checking my points system here, just see how this all works. Yeah, so for the GTE cars, 16 points for win, 14 points for second place, 11 for third, 9 points for fourth, 8 points for fifth, There you go, 7, 6, 5. I'm guessing 4, 3, 2, 1. But I do believe that the pro drivers in the GTE class, if they have an AM driver finish a position in front of him, for instance, if a GTE AM finished first overall in the GTE class, they will take 16 points, and the GTE Pro driver who finished in second will only take the points for second position. So they will not take effectively first in their class, if you get what I'm saying here. So it's a little bit confusing when it comes to that class bit there. It took me a little bit of a while to get my head around it. But yeah, Black Panther, you have scored 9 points. That will be because of your overall finish position in the GTE class as a whole, so both Pro and AM combined, and then also the position that you finished within your GTE AM class as well. And those cumulative points added up to 9. So that's kind of a rough idea as to how the point system works. It's something new here for AOR with this endurance race with the Pro and AM splits in the LMP1 and GTE classes. It's not something that we've run before, it's something new, and was the birth idea from Logan. Or at least the point system was, I think, the decision to split the two classes into Pro and AM was actually suggested by Andrex, and the other coordinators involved like that idea as well. And it seems like a fair idea, to be honest. It does help to kind of keep the championship fights a little bit more alive. As well, I say that both the AM classes in both LMP1 and also GTE, there's quite a substantial gap or points difference between P1 and P2, as Colonel McCoy is getting caught up there with, I believe, Atlas Geraint. Indeed it is. Yeah, obviously 17 points between Cleanstein and Andrew Harper in the LMP1 championship, and then Brzanczyk has got a fair points difference to Mali Bacho as well. We actually bring that up real quick there. You can see the points difference between the two. It's a good 26 points. So that's how things are working there. Quite a big points difference for them. And there's the LMP1 AM standings as well. You can see a big points difference between first and second there, and then likewise with Logan. And when you actually look at the pro standings, this is the LMP1 pro standings. As you can see, things are relatively close at the top end of the field. There's been a few no-shows for a number of drivers as well. Leon the Sick One, this is only his second race that he's actually participated in. Obviously Inky Chris has had solid results all the way through, and his teammate Marauder has had some decent results as well. Colonel McCoy's been quite consistent, but with Inky Chris having some good points finishes, he's the one leading the championship. And then the GTE Pro standings, things are very, very close between the top two, between Dow King and Empower. Obviously Dow King is not racing here in this race this evening, so you'll not be scoring any points. Empower currently leading the GTE class. He's currently in the pit lane as well at the moment. He will be extending his lead in the GTE class, and Mr. Van Orman there, as you can see, I think he was there every single race, but he didn't score any points in round 2, which is the reason why he's fallen off the back of the two leaders in the GTE Pro class. So that's a bit of a points update for you guys. So we're into the final half hour now. Empire serving his final stop to take the last bit of fuel that he needs to see himself to the finish line. Just crawling down the pit lane now. And we'll be heading out back onto track to resume the lead of the GTE class. Chloe still there in second. Logan there behind Two of them just flashing lights at each other, saying you go, no you go, no you go, no you go. Bit of a to me to you moment between the two of them, and now Logan's gonna slip on past. Smolder, 12 seconds off of the back of Chloe, and then it's got a good substantial difference to Xeon behind, who's actually in the pit lane to take on the last amount of fuel that he needs. Thank you very much, Samuel. Things are relatively relaxing here until things get very interesting. We get drivers very close to one another and there's a bit of action, or the driver goes and makes a mistake and crashes. And obviously you can tell things get a little bit more exciting there. But yeah, with only 16 drivers, things are relatively quiet here for this round. Gaps tend to spread out between the drivers. A number of drivers unfortunately weren't able to make it. I know that a few people are actually at Le Mans itself this weekend and therefore couldn't make it because of that. A few other people had other commitments that meant that they weren't able to make this round, and we've also had a couple of dropouts as well this season. Inky Chris is into the pit lane once again. Why is he into the pits? Surely he's got enough fuel to make it to the end of the race. I very much doubt that he needs tyres, so the only thing I can think of is potentially repairing some damage, but that's just cementing Colonel McCoy's second position in this race. I mean, imagine Inky Chris will be happy with a third place in the LMP1 class and allowing himself to continue to extend his lead, even though both Leon and Colonel McCoy will be closing up onto Inky Chris a little bit. Leon the sick one there, very close up to the back. One of the 4 GTs. Mr. Van Orman. That's a very interesting question. He was doing well at the head of the field, and then I believe he got caught up in an incident which saw him incur some damage, and he had to pit because of that. I think there may have potentially been some mistakes somewhere along the line as well that saw him drop down through the field. But he has been closing up on the other drivers. What is he? 47 litres of fuel. He was in and around Smolder and Chloe earlier, but yeah, they've both been in for their final stop, so I think it was just our pit stop that we saw earlier. But yeah, Mr. Van Orman hasn't had the best or most comfortable of races. Stanchek is into the pit lane, and he's only got 7 litres of fuel, which will be the reason why he is into the pits to top up and get the fuel that he needs. Kleinstein is also into the pit lane as well to top up on fuel there. So Leon the Sick Way continuing to lead the way. Leon the Sick One, sorry, continuing to lead the way. Getting my words slightly muddled up there. Gap of 1 minute and 16 odd seconds to Colonel McCoy. Ooh, slight lock up there on the inside front right hand tyre. And that's Dakuza, I think. Indeed it is. Doing a little bit of grass cutting on the inside there as well. Not too sure whether the groundskeeper will be too best pleased with that. There's actually quite a few more penalties starting to come up. So let's take a look at those. Leon the Sick One still has that 1 second penalty that he had before. Colonel McCoy, 4 seconds. Cox on, 5 seconds. Inky Chris is now on a 9 second penalty. Logan has got 4 seconds. Empower still has the 6 seconds that he had before. Chloe, I think last time we looked at 4 seconds, has now got 5. Xeon still got the 1 second, and Mr. Van Orman has also got a 3 second penalty as well. So there's all the penalties for you. Black Panther asking, do all the drivers use Michelin, or is there a difference between manufacturers in the game? So one thing I want to double check here is the liveries and stuff with the cars. Oh no, Dakuza's got to make contact with the pit wall. Can he get it turned around? Speedy Go was in a very similar situation but got caught out a lot worse than that. Ended up in an Austin Powers moment where he's trying to move back and forth, try and free himself from the pit lane. Wasn't able to do so. Dakuza did manage to. In the end they didn't quite get as well sandwiched and wedged in and is underway, but either way, back to the tyres. The tyres are branded based off of what the car used in real life with the appropriate real world livery championship. So obviously the LMP1 cars, the three of them that we run here, the Audi R18, the 919 hybrid, there it is, and then Logan in the Toyota TS050, they're all part of the WEC Championship, and they were all using the Michelin tyres for the LMP1 cars. When it comes to the Corvette that we see here, this is a WEC livery as well, I believe. Although it's not quite 100% clearly stated. The M6 doesn't run in the WEC series, so I'm interested to actually see what tyres that actually has. And they look like Hancock tyres. They're actually on the side of that one, judging by the sticker. That's on Michelin's, I believe. That Golf. Yeah, I can see Michelin sponsorship on the on that Aston Martin, and that's obviously a WEC livery. Xeon's Corvette isn't a WEC livery; it is a fictional livery. However, because the standard livery, which is being demonstrated quite nicely by, I believe, Mr. Van Orman, just changing position there with Mr. Van Orman going up into 4th place. Side by side, obviously the yellow one is an official livery. Xeon's livery that he is running is a fictional one, but because of the... Oh, actually he's running Pirelli tyres. Good spot. So the fictional liveries are running other, like, labelled manufacturer tyres, as it were, but there is no difference between the tyres. They are all using the same identical tyre carcass across the GTE cars. The LMP1 cars have their own LMP1 tyre, which is used across the 3 cars as well. So it's the same across the entire class. Likewise with the GT3 class, they have their own GT3 tyre as well. No matter what series the car and the livery is being used. And I know that we've got a number of cars that have blank pan liveries, a number of cars that have Pirelli World Championship liveries, some have Bathurst or Nürburgring 24-hour liveries, and obviously, yeah, no matter the actual label on the tyres themselves, they do use the same tyre across the entire class, and the label on the actual tyre itself is kind of more just for immersion and completion of the livery, as it were, and kind of fulfilling licensing requirements. But yeah, there's no difference in the actual physics between them. But it certainly looks nice to actually have actual proper kind of, you know, actual stickers on the side, kind of sponsorship branding on the sidewalls of the tyres. Does make it a lot more authentic, and quite nice to see when the cars are travelling at speed as well, rather than just a plain black sidewall, as it were. But yeah, Colonel McCoy currently in 2nd place, as we can see. He's got 26 litres of fuel remaining, so the big question for him is, will he be able to do the remainder of the race distance? Leon the 6th one is now coming out of the pit lane. He's got the fuel that he needs to go to the end quite easily. That would have been his final stop of the race that he just made just there. And he's got a gap, as you can see, of 29.5 seconds to Colonel McCoy. But yeah, the big question is will Colonel McCoy be able to do the remainder of the race distance on that one set of tyres? Coxon is now into third position with Inky Chris's third and long stop, but Coxon will need to make another pit stop. He will not be able to do the remaining 17.5 and a bit minutes on those 17.5 litres of fuel that he has remaining. Inky Chris has got enough to see him to the end, so Inky Chris should retake that third position during Coxon's final pit stop. Kleinstein having a bit of a spin at the Lacombe chicane, doing the right thing though of waiting for a clear spot in the track before rejoining. He gets back out onto the circuit without harming anybody else, which is good. He has got 19, well, best part of 20 litres of fuel. That's not going to see him to the end of the race, so he'll need to make one more pit stop. Logan has got 21 litres. I doubt that that is going to be enough, and he will probably need to make one more final stop unless he does a lot of fuel saving. Empower is going to be safe in his near pristine Corvette. The only thing that doesn't make it absolutely pristine is just the one or two small splodges of tyre debris and bug splat marks on the car. In fact, there aren't any. This car looks absolutely spotless. Chloe circulating around in the M6 in second position. It's got 37 litres. Easily go to the end as well. In a very clean looking M6 as well. A very much kind of anime inspired livery on that BMW. All the very colourful paint splodges. And then Smolder. And a very nice clean looking Aston Martin as well. 36 litres, be easily enough to see himself to the end of the race. Do very much like the Golf liveries on that Aston Martin. Does look absolutely fantastic. That's really cool to see in real life as well. And I went and saw the WEC 6 Hours of Silverstone. Unfortunately didn't make it to Le Mans that year, but did see him at Silverstone running those liveries. They do look and sound absolutely fantastic. Mr. Van Orman in fourth position. A little bit of damage, not a pristine Corvette for him. He's got some scuffs on the side of the car. On the driver's side door, just underneath that wing mirror. But he should have plenty enough fuel to see himself to the end of the race. Zion has got 32 litres as well, also in the Corvette. Just looking in good condition as well. There will be plenty of fuel to see himself to the end. Brzanczak is there running in 6th place in the Ford GT LM. He's got just under 30 litres of fuel. Should be just about enough, I would have thought. Dakuza is coming under pressure from Atlas Gehring coming down the Camel Straight. Actually, Atlas Gehring looking to the inside of Dakuza coming into Lacombe chicane, braking later than the other two, but making a mistake. Oh, that is contact between the two. That put Dakuza into a slight slide, but he managed to gather it back up very nicely there and recover that one. Atlas Gehring just braking a little bit too deep, or running a little bit too deep in the chicane, bouncing across the curb and in a rejoin onto the circuit. Caused him to make contact with Dakuza, but no real harm there. They're both continuing on. And actually Atlas Gehring came out quite a bit worse. Good 2.5 seconds back as he's getting passed by Brzanczak there, I believe. Yeah, it was indeed. So Atlas Gehring in 8th position with 18 litres of fuel. That probably isn't going to be enough for the remainder of the race. Dakuza's got 29, that should be enough for him. Mali Bako is running 2 minutes behind Atlas Gehring. In fact, I can see him there in front of him on track. Mali Bako is actually missing a front bumper. So that what is usually a very pretty looking Ferrari 488 isn't looking all that pretty anymore. But he's got 28 litres, or best part of fuel remaining, so he should see himself to the end of the race. And then Royalty in the final 4 GT, just under 13 seconds off the back of Mali back out. See, it's got some damage to his car. It's got 25 litres of fuel, so that should be enough for the remainder of the race. And Samuel's asking, do the drivers choose what livery they run by themselves? They do indeed. If they're pairing up with another driver to form a team, then the 2 drivers need to use 2 liveries of the same design, not necessarily 100% the same colours. So if Royalty was to have another teammate, which I do believe he does, I believe that Bo and also Speedy Go, one of the 2 of them would be his teammate. Let's have a look. So Royalty is in the GT Am, and Speedy Go is not actually in. Yeah, so neither Speedy Go or Bo are in the same class as Royalty. They are both in the GT Pro, whereas Royalty is in the GT Am. But Royalty's teammate is Flaming Parrot, who isn't racing in this race. So Flaming Parrot would also need to use the Chip Ganassi Ford livery that we see here, but ideally with a different colour. So the variants that you get with these that Ford GT livery is the colour of the sun visor strip and also the wing mirrors, and also I believe the ends of not the ends of the rear wing. So they get a choice of either blue, green, that Royalty is running here, orange, and I think there's one other colour as well. I think it's yellow is the other choice across the 4, and actually Speedy Go and also Bo, well actually both of them retiring from this race, also running the Chip Ganassi livery as well. When it comes to things like Leon the Sick One here and his teammate, who is Yamo, who's not participating, obviously they'll have the same livery. They'll probably just ideally run with different numbers. So I think Leon the Sick One is running with the number 7 car. The other alternative is the number 8 car. There isn't any real difference to distinguish the 2 when it comes to the Audi cars. Likewise with the Porsche as well. I believe the 2 Porsches are identical in their liveries. Unfortunately I can't check because Marauder is no longer in the session and has retired, but I believe the 2 Porsches are the same. They're just numbered 1 and 2. And then Logan in his Toyota TS050, there is a difference between the 2, the number 5 and the number 6 car. The number 5, as you can see, has white wing mirrors, whereas the number 6 car has red wing mirrors. So really small difference between the 2, but at least there is a difference there. So we're into the final 9.5 minutes of round 4 of season 5 of this Apex Online Racing Endurance Championship on Project Cars 2. Leon the Sick One is leading the way in the LMP1 class, 22 seconds up the road from Colonel McCoy, who seems to be putting in some pretty solid lap times of 156.357 on the previous lap. So Colonel McCoy certainly pushing and wanting to try and close down that race lead that Leon the Sick One currently holds. Coxon is currently in 3rd place, but will be needing to make a pit stop before the end of the race to make a splash and dash. Inky Chris is just 5 seconds down the road from Coxon. They're lurking, waiting for Coxon to make his pit stop, and that will bring Inky Chris back up onto the final step of the podium in 3rd place. Cleanstein is there in 5th position, a couple of laps down on Inky Chris and the race leaders. And then Logan rounds out the LMP1 field in 6th position, and he is a further minute and 21 seconds behind Cleanstein. Looking at the LMP1 cars, M-Power, we can see that in the beautiful Corvette C7R, leading the way with a 1 minute and 51 second lead to Chloe, who is in second place in the M6, just coming down the Kemmel Straight, so almost a full lap between the two. Relatively lonely race for M-Power since Speedy Go retired earlier on during the race. Smolder is there in third position currently in that Aston Martin. Mr. Van Orman is hunting him down in fourth place. The gap 16 to 17 seconds between the two. Both of them have got enough fuel to see themselves to the end of the race, so they won't be needing to make a splash and dash. But on the previous lap, Smolder extended the gap by a good 4 seconds between the two of them. Xeon is there in fifth place, 18 seconds down the road from Mr. Van Orman. Bazanchak is a further 45 seconds off the back of Xeon in sixth place. And then 1 minute and 43 seconds behind him is Dakuza in seventh. Atlas Gerin is trundling around in eighth place with Mali Bako. They're immediately behind him, but also a lap down behind him as well. So that's not a battle position that we are seeing there between those two drivers. Mali Bako in ninth place, and then at the back of the field in last position is Royalty, 10th place in the GTE class, last overall, but he will still score some points providing that he finishes, well, actually I believe he's completed 90% of the race now, but he will still score points for getting that 10th position in class, which will be good for him in terms of his championship pursuit. And he'll close, actually it won't close down on Mali Bako. Mali Bako will extend his second place from Royalty a little bit more after this race, and Bazanchak, who was a little bit further in sixth in class, will continue to extend his lead in the GTE field. So that is a run through of the current standings as we are into the last 6 minutes. Let's go on board with Leon the Sick One. So he's continuing to drive on round the circuit. Taking nice smooth lines, not really troubling the curbs too much. Just holding on to that race lead that he currently holds, putting in some reasonably solid and consistent lap times. He's got enough of a buffer there, despite Colonel McCoy's pace. He doesn't really need to worry about pushing too hard or being under too much pressure. And in fact, with Colonel McCoy with an 11-second penalty to his name, even if Leon the Sick One does feel threatened, with Colonel McCoy coming in a lot closer, or even potentially actually overtaking Leon the Sick One, Leon should come away with the race win, providing that he stays within 10 seconds of Colonel McCoy in front of him. So Leon the Sick One doing a solid mid 56 on the previous lap. Colonel McCoy coming across the line, start finish line round about now, does a 57.4, so 9/10 of a second between the two, although Leon the Sick One will get held up behind the Corvette that we see immediately here in front of us, but doing the right thing, being smart, patient, not really troubling the Corvette, and just waiting until the exit of the Lacombe chicane to slide on past under the acceleration of the hybrid of the LMP1 car. And actually Inky Chris has closed up onto the back of Coxon. They are within half a second of each other, and actually Coxon has only got 1.5 litres of fuel remaining. Hopefully he's aware of that. He will need to make a splash and dash if he's going to make it to the end of the race, and no doubt Inky Chris will be sliding on past relatively soon. coming out of Pouon and up towards Piff Paff. Campus corner. Inky Chris is there lurking, just waiting for the opportunity to come, which will probably be coming out of Curb Paul Lefray. Down the back straight towards Blanchimont, where he will dump a load of the hybrid and make the pass as he pulls out of the slipstream now alongside Coxon and slides himself back up into third position. Now the real question is, has Inky Chris got the fuel to get to his pit stall in the pit lane? He's got half a litre of fuel remaining coming into the bus stop chicane. He's playing it very, very tight. And to be fair, he was... contact with the wall there on the pit entry. I was going to say he was very, very close to being able to make the full race distance on this final stint. He's got 2 minutes of the race remaining, but he'll literally be in for probably what is about 5-6 litres of fuel. A quick splash and dash and back out. Won't need to change the tyres. Shouldn't need to repair any damage unless you picked up some suspension damage in clobbering the pit entry, but taking on 10 litres, back out of the pit lane again, and he'll be resuming underway in fourth position. He's got a nice big buffer to Cleanstein, which is the car behind, and he'll be fine. And yeah, it does seem like everyone seems to be hitting that pit wall on the entrance to the pit lane. I think it's personally because they're cutting across the green bit on the inside, which will obviously be a little bit wetter than the some other parts of the circuit, so there may not be the grip there, and they're also making the angle actually into the pit lane a bit more acute and a bit tighter, whereas if they actually stuck to the pit entry lane, it may be a little bit wider, but it is also a longer route, and you probably do save yourself effectively a little bit more time by taking the route that the drivers do. It's just a little bit more risk, that comes with it as well. So Leon the Sick One is on his way to the bus stop chicane with 50 seconds remaining, which means that he is going to have one more lap, and he's going to be forcing everyone else one more lap as well to complete. He's got quite a big gap. Excuse me. He's got quite a big gap between himself and the next car physically on the track up the road, which is going through the Lacombe chicane on that track map. I don't think it is... an LMP1 car. I think it might be a GTE, but I don't think he'll be able to catch him before the end of the race. So now the timer clocks to 0. And providing that Leon the Sick One can navigate the remainder of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit from turn 10 and 11 onwards without incident, he will come away with the race win. And that was very wide there, coming out the exit of turn 11, corner with no name, but now does have a name. I just can't remember what that name is, but there may potentially be a slowdown penalty for Leon the Sick One, unless he has managed to clear it already. And actually Logan is into the pit lane as well, just for a quick splash and dash. Has Inky Chris got enough fuel? Yeah, Inky Chris has got enough fuel for the remainder of the race. So Leon the Sick One just come out of Curb Paul Lefray and on the run down towards Blanchimont. Goes through that for one last time, and then comes into the bus stop chicane one last time with a big lock up of the brakes there. Comes out, dumps whatever hybrid boost he has remaining, comes across the line to take the race win here of round 4 at Spa-Francorchamps. Celebrates by doing a good 720 there, or 540, sorry, off the pit wall. Colonel McCoy coming home in second place, the next man to come across the start-finish line good solid result and performance by him after the early contact with Marauder. He picks up at second place. Quick flash of the lights. Inky Chris has come across to confirm himself in third position. Coxon is just coming through the bus stop chicane now as well, so he will lock in fourth place in the LMP1 class. Kleinstein will pick up fifth, and Logan will no doubt pick up sixth, not without doing a little bit more. Rally crossing out the exit there. Empower is the GTE class leader. It's just coming through Stavilo and curb pull through. Coming down that back straight. And you're right, Malibako has finished behind Royalty. There has been a change of position between the two as they came across the start-finish line. So Malibatu in 10th place, Royalty in 9th. Let's pick up Empower again as he's just coming through the bus stop chicane for one last time. Coming across the start-finish line, and he will take the win in the GTE class. Very solid performance by him. Chloe comes home confirmed in second. Smolder has already crossed the line in third. Mr. Van Orman in fourth place. Zion gets fifth. Bazanchek will be the final car to come across the line with 4 litres of fuel remaining as well. So he got that down. Nailed very nicely. He'll be coming home in 6th place as he comes off and accelerates out of the final turn and across the start-finish line to confirm that 6th place. So I'll do a quick rundown of the final standings. Leon the 6th one, as I said, takes the race win overall, and in the LMP1 class, Colonel McCoy in 2nd, Inky Chris 3rd, Coxon 4th, Kleinstein in 5th place, Logan 6th. Zen takes home 7th place, and he retired on lap 5, and then unfortunately I didn't get to catch the GTE class, but at least we got an idea as to the finishing positions that they came home in. Unfortunately, my Discord is being a little bit funny and is not registering any sound, so unfortunately I won't be able to do any driver interviews to round out this this session. But as it is now 25 to 11 local time here in the UK, I think I'm going to conclude the coverage here of round 4. Here is the calendar, just as a reminder. So the next race is round 5. Hopefully we can get someone else to fill in for me, because unfortunately I can't do that race and cover that. But hopefully I should be back for the 11th of July for the final round 6 at Le Mans 24-hour circuit, which will be another 2.4-hour race. But yeah, that is going to conclude tonight's coverage. So thank you very much for everybody who tuned in. If you don't want to miss out on any future live streams here at the Apex Online Racing YouTube channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed today's live stream and enjoyed the video. If you're watching this back, make sure to hit that like button, and of course feel free to comment away. Thank you very much for everybody tuning in. Hopefully I shall catch you again very, very soon, but until then, have fun, stay safe, and take care.